I'd like to call upon Saurav Majumdar, Editor Business Today, to welcome Mr. Kamath on stage for this very special conversation.
Good evening and welcome, Mr. Kamath. Always a pleasure talking to one of the icons of the Indian banking industry, someone who has seen so many decades of change in the Indian financial sector, has led some of the most, the deepest changes in banking in terms of technology, in terms of, universal banking, ICICI Bank. Inflation broadly coming under control in India, but of course there are serious global headwinds from overseas. In fact, at last year also, the finance minister made a point saying that she cannot guarantee what will happen if external influences come and spoil the party. So how do you look at these developments over the last few months?
Thank you, Thank you, Saurav. I think the last year has been a learning curve, again, for all of us. That the government, the leaders in the government, central banks, and people like us, maybe observers and maybe bankers. But let me put that into perspective. You touched upon inflation, and then I need to touch upon interest rates, and I need to touch upon, I would say, economic theory, and then put this into perspective. Conventional wisdom was that if you had inflation, which is beyond what you adjusted interest rates. But the whole of last year, the West did not do that. You had inflation in double digits, and you had interest rates nominal, just 2-3% at some countries. Some countries not even that. So basically, this whole concept of interest rate and inflation, I think, is under now, probably will go under re-examination. And in that context, what we did, I think, was perfect. That is that I think the central bank and the government resisted the temptation to hike interest rates, kept them at an even keel, addressed what could be challenges to inflation, and thereby contained inflation, and I think helped everyone, the lay consumer, in terms of not necessarily getting something at inflated prices, and keeping interest rates low. Because interest rates low in India in the past meant that you had the corporate world benefiting. But now equally, or a slightly higher proportion, the lay public benefits. Because if you look at in the system, borrowing from banks, I think consumer credit is keeping pace with the corporate lending and outgrowing it. So if you keep interest rates high, that sector is going to hurt. And that will again hurt consumption. I think we're getting all these equations right. So globally, there were headwinds, but they have been, we can talk the whole 30 minutes in that. They have been contained in a particular way. I think in India, I think we did the right things by looking at interest rates, liquidity, keeping everything, and I think we cleaned up what we had to do. Further, going to the next phase, as it were, I strongly believe that we have 25 years as our horizon. For a very simple reason. It has been paraphrased as Amrit Kal. But my reasoning is that there's so much to be done that gives you a runway which is very long. And that runway will take you to 25 years of growth at near double digits. So that's what I hope we will be able to pace ourselves through a long period of very significant growth between 8 and 10%, should get us to where we want to be.
But there are immediate headwinds, Mr. Kamath. Already growth has been, forecast. Even RBI and the, global financial institutions have sort of forecast, lower growth, particularly in FY24, and so what is your sense of the immediate headwinds? And I'll come to specific areas in a little.
Immediate headwinds, as I see, are still, the major headwind would still be the uncertainty in the political context across Europe. Other than that, I don't see any headwinds really. So if you then look at everything else that is happening in, whether it's in mainland Europe or further west, flows from it. And that uncertainty in fuel prices, impact on inflation, and the cycle that is coming around that. I would believe that once that political situation gets resolved, the war I mean, things will come down to normal.
And what about the pressure on the currency, on the rupee? How do you view that?
Again, if you look at, it's again one currency which has strengthened. But if you then look at it across, the impact on other currencies, every currency has weakened, I would say, to a degree which is significantly more than India. So our currency has performed better as compared to any other basket. Except in the last 1 or 2 months, I think the renminbi, which had weakened in sync with the Western currencies, but has tightened up in the last 6 weeks or so. But we need to understand why that is, and if there's a debt problem there, which is probably going to come out, what will happen there. It's a different case. But the rest of the marketplace, I think the rupee has performed better, and will find its own level as we go along.
In fact, my colleague Udayan Mukherjee wrote in his column in Business Today recently that India is the cleanest dirty shirt among global economies. Do you sort of?
I would say we are the cleanest shirt. Why do I say? Then I will not say dirty shirt. We are the cleanest shirt.
In the sense that
amongst all the dirty shirts. Let me put it that way.
So you do think that we are definitely among the better performers now.
Yeah, there are various reasons why we are the better performers. I think there's a whole host of reasons, and how we will grow. One is we have the opportunity to grow. Second is, I think we have a clean balance sheet, both corporate and banks. And I can say this, that in my 50 years of banking, I have not seen a cleaner balance sheet over this course. So the bank balance sheets are clean. Corporate India, throughout my career, I saw corporate India, leverage of 4:1, 2:1 long-term debt to equity, and another, you add on working capital debt, 4:1. Till 2000. Post 2000, it came down to maybe 2.5:1 total debt to equity. Thereafter, it has dropped. And today, if you look at the top 100 companies, hardly any debt, including working capital debt. There's hardly any debt. So you have, I would say, the conditions, the ground conditions for growth intact. And what we typically probably do not as yet fully reckon and will reckon is the impact the digital super cycle will have on India. Again, I use China as a proxy. 30-35% of the economy today is driven by the digital economy there, and we have all the makings of it. And we have one significant advantage, because a lot of technologies we have leapfrogged, whether it is artificial intelligence, machine learning, or go back to the whole digital world, we have leapfrogged. As indeed we have leapfrogged in terms of clean energy. What I mean is the cost per installed unit has been significantly low because we were late starters, as we were in telecom. But then, of course, we have set our own benchmarks. So I'm sure that given this playing field, clean balance sheets, clean banking balance sheets, we are set to grow.
You don't seem to believe that we were a little behind the curve in terms of interest rate hikes when inflation hit us, and also now over time the rate of hikes of interest rates has also come down. The last CPI print is also looking good. Where do you see? Do you think we are at the end of the rate increase cycle?
I think throughout my career I have never tried to comment on central bank policy. I'll just make this point that the events in the West, whereby they believe it is now right to be behind inflation, after preaching to us all these years, when we were struggling to manage it, and we ended up increasing interest rates and maybe hurting ourselves. I don't know. In retrospect, somebody will have to analyze. I think what we did this time was right. Perfect. I would think to great confidence on the part of monetary policy authorities to do that, and for government to support this policy and hold the thing together, because indeed, by being behind the curve, we could have damaged ourselves. But I think new economic theory is being written where inflation and interest rates don't necessarily go in hand to hand, and we will need to examine what are the controls and checks and balances of inflation distinct from interest rates as we go along.
And the interest rates are now sort of easing out, the rate hikes.
Indeed, I think there is no need to do any trade-off at all. I would think that if we had not done this, we would not have had as clean balance sheets as we have today. Just to put it in context, the expectation was when COVID hit us that the book that would come for restructuring, you remember there was the expert committee to restructure. Our estimate was that around 9 lakh crores of assets will come for restructuring from corporate India. In the event, 1 year later, all that came up was 45,000 crores for restructuring. And I can equally certainly say that if interest rates had not been held where they had been held, and of course, the containment measures COVID taken by the country had not been effective, we would not have been in this situation. But a good part of it was because interest rates were held.
You have been in China, Mr. Kamath. You just spoke of China earlier. Also, we were having a discussion on that. What do you see the threat which China can have on the Indian financial stability, if at all? And what is the kind of what can be the challenge which the Indian financial system will face?
No, I don't see a threat per se from China in terms of the financial system. A threat in a competitive context should have been to our manufacturing, but there again I think policies that are appropriate have been taken by the government. We allow, I think, imports of things that this country needs, and generally, yes, there is a trade balance which is in favor of China, but I think we have been managing our overall global trade balance in a way that it should not impact us. But the financial system per se, I don't see a threat.
And in terms of the global uncertainties, at this point, where do you say that they are on the decline, what is the kind of challenges which the Indian financial system needs to prepare for going forward in a completely different globalized world?
Well, I would think the key learnings of, let me start with the events in Europe. To me, the key learnings there are several. One important one is that the fear of sanctions could also then be turned to advantage. For example, Russia, when sanctions were imposed, I think the financial world expected it to collapse and disintegrate in terms of its financial structure. That did not happen. So you had a quick peg moving on to the gold standard, as it were, to say that link the ruble to gold and pay me in ruble, and then the currency which had gone from 60 to 140 corrected back to 60. So there are quick learnings that are coming out in terms of what could be action and what could be consequence. And I think all countries are watching this. The second consequence was really payment systems, the hegemony of one payment system. I think you can see now what is happening in terms of, I would say, the rest of the world coming together to say that we need to work on parallel payment systems. And in India, I won't talk of other countries, I think we have done virtually revolutionary stuff with the UPI. And that becomes the backbone of the payment and settlement structure in the country, with all the checks and balances that any Western system has. And if we can take that as the settlement system that we want to use globally, which indeed I saw a notification just yesterday, taking one step forward in that direction. But if these are used as a path that we would adopt to deal, we are de-risking ourselves considerably. Somebody forwarded me a piece today that the second largest Russian bank has set up a settlement route in rupee. I'm reasonably sure that this is going to happen more and more on a bilateral basis, and there will be newer systems coming up to, in a way, supplement older ones. And not necessarily that older ones have to be completely disbanded. So we are entering very exciting territory, all driven by technology and all driven by our country's ability to leverage technology. The two things are coming together to provide us a safety net, which just 5 years back just wasn't there.
You've been a firm believer, Mr. Kamath, of India's advantage in creating this digital super cycle, and therefore that being a major engine in powering growth in the next, say, 10, 12, 15 years. Tell us a little more about what are the key changes you see happening.
Yeah, but I'll actually lay the foundation as to why this is happening and why I believe happening. I think it all is on the foundation of affordability. You have affordable device cost, you have affordable data cost. Given that, I think it is as easy for somebody in a remote place, not really seeing what is happening in say, urban India or the rest of the world, to be digitally connected at within his capability, I would say, to connect and be a part of that process. So all you have to do is to look at this new India. I get fascinated by what I call YouTube content creators. And I'm not meaning influencers. I'm talking of small town content creators. I would urge people to spend a little time before you go to sleep trying to understand what's happening. And where is YouTube and the algorithm pushing you? It's pushing you to rural India. So you know that something is happening in rural India. The content creators in rural India have got more subscribers than content creators in urban India. Their content has more views on a daily basis than urban Indian content. And people who are coming from a village, no sewage, no water supply, plain brick walls, unlined, are today making over $1 million in terms of income streams from creating 10-minute content every day and being seen by maybe 6 to 7 million people on a daily basis. So I could not have imagined this 5 years back that we would have an India where somebody coming from a village would create this sort of a following. I salute these sort of trends, and this is not unique. This is spreading across because what this person is doing and people like him are doing is being followed by his subscribers and the viewers, and their aspirations increase, and so UPI or something subtle. But at the very deep end, a change is happening, and that change is also bringing in income. I think a confluence of this, and of course you then have the digital startups, which are all a given, so I'm not going to talk about that. So they propel the whole, it's going to happen because of this new digital world. Those are the players who are bridging, and they're bringing the smaller bank to the bigger bank, because what say a large number of incumbents can't do is use technology appropriately. They may think that they are using technology appropriately, but they aren't, because legacies are very difficult to overcome. And when we launched technology, just a front end provided by a fintech firm to an incumbent bank. Typically, it has been a small bank which has leveraged this, but it could be a big bank tomorrow. So I think clearly that is a path to grow, where you have challenges with your legacy platform. You can work with a new platform. And I would think that in all these, the newer applications that will arise, the fintech firms will be more agile, and this partnership has to be leveraged for success.
On the NBFC front, as more and more newer NBFCs also come in, some of them backed by some very big groups, do you see this whole lines between bank, fintech and NBFC getting blurred, and NBFCs looking at merging, because that's something RBI has on its agenda, pushing bigger, larger NBFCs to actually turn into banks and merge with banks, as has been the RBI's view. How do you see that playing out?
I see this as an evolutionary path, because as of now there are probably only a couple, maybe 2 or 3 very large NBFCs which could provide this. But if I look at it in depth, yes, they are providing products in a much more agile and nimble way than what the banks are. And I think that is good. And the banks probably need to learn from these entities and see what they could do to compete on a like-to-like basis. Yes, as of now, funding cost for an NBFC is probably higher than that for a bank. And regulator, rightly so, would like to make sure that the oversight mechanism is as robust as it is for a bank. So I think this is a period of finding level. And once that level is done, I'm sure the regulator will put in place what is required. whether it is tighter oversight of NBFCs or the path that you said, then of course the questions will arise, what sort of NBFCs will be allowed to convert to a bank and so on. But I would think in the next 2 years, 3 years, we should have clarity on this.
There is this whole debate now on the level of credit growth, the high credit growth, and the deposit growth not keeping pace with the credit growth. Now, how do you see that, and what that is a crisis which could be sort of staring the banking sector in the face? How do you see banks playing that out?
I don't think it's a crisis. I think it's just a question of analyzing facts. Historically, bank deposits and the banking sector in general have grown at around 1.3 to 1.5x of your GDP growth. So if you look at if 7 to 8% of the GDP growth, deposits I think currently are growing at around little over 10% or so. It's appropriate. I think what you see in terms of credit growth was probably what was not happening in the last 2 years. So your base was small. So you probably need to correct for base and see. I have not done it, but then you will get a better picture. A. B, yes, you should also factor in that there could be a shift from savings going into bank deposit to savings going into other means of savings, whether it is insurance or mutual funds, because mutual funds are now growing at almost 50% higher rate than banks. So there is a shift away. But from there again, money is coming back into into the corporate world, either through equity or through debt instruments. So I think it's a positive cycle of growth with the money that is the saver wants to put in going into a few areas in terms of what.
So you don't see an asset liability mismatch?
I don't see an asset liability mismatch. And there would have been an asset liability mismatch if the banks continue to lend for infrastructure without having the right liability structure. But I think now the government, the central bank, and both the banks and the borrower have realized that that is a risk that we should not be carrying. And I think that correction will happen now. As, for example, corporate world, corporate borrowers, where they have long-dated instruments, the need for long-dated instruments, I'm sure they will approach the market. And newer structures are coming to play in the market, to be seen in the marketplace. Take, for example, the REITs that are there. I think we are at the start of, say, a whole set of new instruments, which will provide appropriate tenor support to you in a financial context and de-risk your operations. And banks, see, where are banks ideal? Banks are ideal where your maturity profile is 1 year on an average. And it's a very secure lending like home loans. The maturity may be longer, but then you have an option to reset. But if you were to do fixed rate home loans for a long maturity, then you're carrying an untenable risk in your books. So I think these learnings are coming up, and
in fact, that was to be my next question about, you as NABFID, now you're in the infrastructure space in a big way. And as the government pushes capital expenditure, infrastructure in a huge way, we have the entire government push behind it. What are the kinds of mistakes which, we saw what happened to banks which earlier when they went into infrastructure without doing exactly what you are suggesting that they should be doing and are doing now. What are the kind of key things, 3 or 4 things they should keep in mind so that mistakes aren't repeated?
I think there is a whole lot of systemic things that one needs to look at. I think one is, say, the financial context, whether the funding that you are doing is appropriate, the leverage and the tenor. Are you sure of that? Second is, are you sure of the cash flows from the underlying asset? And for that, do you have the adequate checks and balances and the evaluation mechanisms that are needed? And is there, I would say, history to tell you whether you will go wrong or right? Now, when we look back at probably 2010 onwards, lending that took place, there was no history. You really did not know what could go wrong in a power project. Yes. And a lot of power projects have gone wrong for, I would say, reasons much beyond that a bank could have handled or the entrepreneur could have handled. For example, you are given the license to mine coal and the license was withdrawn. I'm not going into why. What happens? Who takes the risk? The risk has been borne by but now, 5 or 7 years later or 10 years later, you know that risk is present. So I will not venture unless there is a mine in production. So I am not going to go by, so you are better informed. Similarly, on a road project, the issues and the challenges in acquisition of land. And for that, I think government did a good thing to say that we will seed these.
Yes.
And we will, implementation risk is taken care of. And then to market, and I think the NHI model is a brilliant model, where they take care of the initial risk and market, and they could sell the asset in the market, create a REIT out of it, which is what they're doing now, and get appropriately funded. So these structures did not exist 10 years back. Now this is part of your learning. So I think the mistakes that first. Every point, these learnings add to what you could do.
Mr. Kamath, we are at the threshold of the last full budget before election year. And we have, as we discussed, some headwinds. We have limited fiscal space. What would you think, what would you expect and hope from the upcoming budget this time?
I think, again, the government has done a remarkable job in tiding over the last 3 years, 2020, 21, 22. And I think those learnings are already there. And what I say is probably something which is a status quo, but driving more efficiency in the system. Because you see the impact of efficiency that has been brought in terms of government revenues, collections on whatever front and so on. So I think that is the mantra. Just keep pushing that to improve efficiency and improve government revenues, and the rest falls into place.
So you see a continuing push in government capital expenditure? Like
I would think so. I would think so. I don't see any reason why they should. And I think the emphasis will be on increasing revenue through better efficiency and collection. And that should then defray, whatever you need to.
Do you think the hope that private sector investments in expenditure, capital expenditure will follow is happening? Do you see those?
Yeah, my view is that, we were just discussing this before we came, and that corporate India has clearly learned that now you need to manage very little debt. From 4:1 debt equity in 2000 came down to 2:1 in 2010, and now virtually no debt at all on the books. I think corporate India is loving that situation. So I don't expect them to borrow, but they're also generating huge amounts of cash. So they are deploying that to grow in their existing businesses. But if you were to tell them, take that cash, leverage it and build a new business, they may not be willing to do that. So that, I think, they are reassessing strategy, most of them. But what they are doing should be enough to provide us the sort of economic growth that we want, supplemented by infrastructure spend which the government is doing. And there is also large infrastructure spend happening from the private sector in areas where they believe de-risking has already been done. So if you look at ports, airports, power, green power particularly, telecommunications, there is hardly any government spend. It's only in those areas where there is still some perception of risk where government is spending.
So you're saying the cash available is not being deployed in new projects in some areas, but there is infrastructure spend which is happening from the private sector as well. Now, before we wind up, Mr. Kamath, you are now associated also with this big behemoth which is supposed to enter the financial sector, which is Jio Financial Services. Tell us a little more about how that is coming.
Well, I think what's available just now with all of us is just the demerger announcement and the documents. Nothing more than that as of. I think in consonance with the overall economic growth, it is the opportunity that is there in this space which has probably made the group look at this demerger. And to me, probably there is space for more players in this sector. So it will be a very interesting journey to look at how to leverage this as you go along.
Mr. K V Kamath, thank you very much for speaking to us. It's an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Saurav. I'd like to... Well, we're all, of course, been waiting for this session. The Governor himself is with us. He's just going to be entering the hall in just a moment to discuss the economy, banking, and riding the storm. We've, of course, through a number of sessions today, been looking at different aspects of the banking and financial ecosystem, the major comeback turnaround, opportunities, high levels of optimism, and, of course, the key challenges going ahead. Who better to discuss some of these important aspects than the Governor himself? The RBI, of course, always keeping things on track and currently very much closely watched, commentary closely watched in light of the global interest rate and inflationary scenario. I'd like to welcome on stage Doyen Mukherjee, our global business editor at the India Today Group, to welcome Shaktikanta Das, the Governor, Reserve Bank of India. A big round of applause, please. We'll just begin in a moment, and then we'll have to do that round of applause again. So, yeah. Well, the next few sessions are fairly power-packed. We're, of course, going to have that, very intimate discussion and get a lot of insight from the Governor himself in just a moment. And then we will also be having with us the Minister of State, Ministry of Finance, as well as a little later into the evening, Nitin, Gadkari, the Honourable Minister of Road, Transport and Highways. So there's a lot lined up for you over the next few hours. And, of course, the highlight later in the evening will be the Best Bank Award. So do, of course, continue to stay with us for that. Just a few highlights from the conversations today, of course, have been incredible optimism, and there you have it. Thank you, everybody. A big round of applause. Welcome, Governor. Welcome, Doyen.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I don't think I need to introduce the RBI Governor to you. All of you know him, so we can get started straight away. Mr. Das, thank you. Yeah. The way the last 1 year has been, just want to start by asking you, when you brush your teeth in the morning, do you see a few more extra gray hairs on your head?
No, I attained wisdom, I think, fairly early in life. And I've been having this gray hair for quite a long time. So, how many more has been added, I think probably my friends from Mumbai will be able to tell. But otherwise, it's always been like that.
Has it been the most challenging year of your tenure, or would you say the COVID year 2020 was more challenging?
No, you know, every challenge in a particular context becomes, you know, it looks more challenging than the previous one. I mean, there were so many situations when I was a part of the government when we dealt with a lot of a lot of challenges. When I came to RBI in December 2018, the entire 2019, the primary focus, not just one of the areas where we concentrated from RBI, but the primary focus in the financial sector was on the NBFC segment.
Correct.
Post IL&FS, liquidity had dried up. There was a considerable undermining of market confidence in the NBFC sector. So in that context, we had to really focus and see that the NBFC sector makes a comeback. So we very intensively focused on the liquidity situation in NBFCs, the bad asset situation in NBFCs, and I think by the end of 2019, we were almost coming to an end of that problem. Right. Then of course the war came in then of course the COVID came in 2020, 21 was Delta wave, and 22 was the war. So it's been one challenge after the other.
Exciting times for you. But, there's been a lot of talk of late of monetary policy failure, the letter that you've written to the government, which none of us have seen. But I want to ask you if you think, on hindsight, you could have done anything differently. It's a hypothetical question. Hindsight is always 20/20. But do you think you could have done anything differently or would have done anything differently in the last 1 year?
I think we have been on the right path. Okay. That is our assessment. I mean, people can hold different opinions. I'll tell you why. You see, the inflation even during 2020 later part, around October of 2020, inflation had gone up. It had touched 6%. And there was market expectation in some segments of the market that RBI will probably increase the rate. There were people who were saying that RBI should now turn the focus to inflation and increase the rate. But our assessment showed that going into January or so of 2021, the inflation will come down. And indeed, it came down. Then 2021, again, in the latter part of 2021, the inflation was gradually going up. In the February MPC, which was very critical, the inflation projection which we had for that financial, for the next financial year, that is from 2021-22, for that financial year, our assessment of the average inflation was that it was going to be 4.5%. The professional forecasters in the market, their forecast ranged between 4.6 to about 5.2%. Whatever it is, inflation was going to be around, in the worst situation, around 5%. We had done our scenario analysis assuming crude at even higher prices at $95 per barrel, $100 per barrel, and we found that the inflation in the worst situation would be around 5%. Now growth was recovering. We wanted a safe landing of the economy during the year 21-22. So in February, contrary to what somebody may say that RBI probably should have increased towards the end of around, let's say, December 21 or February 22. Somebody may say that, but the point is we wanted the economy to have a safe landing, the recovery of the economy, the GDP to be above the pre-pandemic levels, and 21-22 growth was about 1.6% above the pre-pandemic levels of 1920. I'm giving a long answer, but I think
it's a very interesting answer. Please go ahead.
It is necessary. So, economy was recovering. We wanted a safe landing for the economy in terms of the growth figures. And I think today, looking back, it gives us great satisfaction that last year the economy recorded, last year meaning 21-22, it was 8.7%. And for the current year, our projection, current year meaning, current year, 22-23, our projection in RBI is 6.8%. The National Statistical Office has projected 7%. We will know after March. So the economy has not only landed safely, the economy has remained resilient, notwithstanding this huge amount of global spillovers which are emanating because of the effect of the war, geopolitics, and the synchronized monetary policy tightening, especially by the US Fed and other advanced economies. Inflation, yes, it did go up to 7% after reaching a peak of 7.8% in April 22. It has come down. In between, it went up once for 7.4 or so. Now, December figure were released yesterday. It was 5.7. It has come down from 5.8 to 5.7. It's mainly due to softening of food inflation. I do concede that point. But, so therefore, looking at this, now, the law mandates that RBI is supposed to, the RBI Act, the law mandates that RBI has to maintain price stability, basically meaning that maintain the inflation around 4%, keeping in mind the objective of growth. And I think we have kept the objective of growth, which had to be given primacy during pandemic times and thereafter. We have not lost sight of the need to focus on inflation. So therefore, when the war started and, the international prices of commodities, even the food prices went up, prices of edible oil, prices of cereals also went up because of the war in Ukraine. So we did not hesitate to take a decision in an off-cycle meeting last year in May. We were criticized for that. But it was necessary because we didn't want to give a big shock in our June monetary policy. So we split it. We did 40 basis point increase in May and another, we did another 50 basis point increase. So even looking back, I think we have been on the right course. And I think, the earlier theorists of being behind the curve, etc., I think that discussion on being behind the curve is over.
Okay, that's a long answer. Have you just...
Very long answer, but it had to be explained.
In this long answer, have you just paraphrased your letter to the government?
I have said it earlier. It's an intelligent guess which everybody can make, and I'm sure anybody else can make in this room. But broadly, yes, I think, in a way, manner of speaking, broadly, yes.
Broadly, yes. You spoke about this inflation targeting band. Would you go as far as to say, given the way inflation is moving and the kind of volatility in prices we are seeing globally, that whole notion of that target band needs to be revisited today?
I would not think so at this point of time. The inflation targeting framework did facilitate maintenance of average CPI inflation at about 3.9% from 2016 when it was instituted, when it started, to the pre-pandemic position in February 2020. So for those 3 years, almost 3 years, the average inflation was 3.9%, close to 4%. After the pandemic, of course, the situation changed. Now, we have had, one after the other major shocks, the COVID, then the war and monetary policy tightening, the current volatility in the financial markets, etc. But I think it's too early to shift the goalpost. The 4% has a certain meaning. And also, let me add that our target of 4% plus minus 2%, to declare it as a failure, if you exceed that, then only it's a failure. I think that gives us sufficient flexibility in our monetary policy decision making. We utilize this flexibility, the Monetary Policy Committee, the MPC, utilize this flexibility embedded in the inflation targeting framework to tolerate higher inflation of 5%, 5.5%, and even more than 5.5%, up to 6%, because the requirement of that time when we were undergoing the stress of COVID and then the, mostly the COVID impact during those 2 years, slightly higher inflation had to be tolerated because the economy required help. The economy required support. We had to infuse a lot of liquidity. We had to also do a substantial reduction in policy rates. So therefore, the current target of plus minus 2% gives enough flexibility, policy flexibility to the Monetary Policy Committee. So keeping that in mind, I would feel that the 4% target with plus minus 2% is very robust. In the Indian context, I don't think there is any need for any change.
Okay, you say that you would not have done anything differently, looking back. But when you look at the Federal Reserve's actions, I mean, I'm not asking you to pass judgment on them, but as one central banker observing another central bank, would you say they made a mistake?
No, it will not be fair on my part to comment on another central bank.
But there are no Americans in the audience.
No, we have a central bank community also. We meet every 2 months. We meet every 2 months in Basel under the aegis of the BIS, the Bank for International Settlements in Basel. We meet every 2 months. Last weekend I was in Basel. We had a meeting, and there we have very free and frank exchange of views and thoughts, and how we look at each other.
You don't think they should have pressed the trigger earlier, the US Federal Reserve?
No, I would not like to comment on that. I think he is the best judge where he is sitting. From outside, many things, we can assume so many things from outside. We can form our own opinion. But ultimately, it depends on the person who is in the chair. He knows so many inside details and so many other, angularities and details, and, he is much better positioned to take a decision. So whether he was right or he was wrong, I think it's not proper for me to comment.
Now the whole focus has shifted. I mean, earlier everybody's focus was on when the Fed will stop raising rates and when they will pivot, start cutting rates once again. But now everybody's saying it will be higher for longer. Maybe rates will remain at this elevated level in the US for a very long time. And that is probably material to us as well, because we can't function immune of what the US Federal Reserve is doing. So what is your expectation of what might pan out there?
No, I'll talk about the global situation, and let me also qualify by saying that I'm not giving any forward guidance or any indication about what the MPC is going to do in the first week of February.
No, I've not asked you that question either. I'm not asked.
No, I'm not saying, you don't take it as a forward guidance for the MPC's decision to be taken. But if the geopolitical conflicts continue in the manner they are at the moment, if the geopolitical situation continues as it is, if there are no new flashpoints, because international geopolitics, if you see, there could be new flashpoints also. So if the current geopolitical crisis continues in the way it is, it could be a situation of high for long with regard to interest rates world over.
Including India.
Not just United States, but I think world over. Now, including India, I will not say. I have said world over.
India is part of the world.
India is part of the world. But having said that, I would also like to add that notwithstanding the geopolitical tensions persisting, every country, every system, human society knows how to adjust to a new situation. So global supply chains have considerably eased out compared to the supply chain bottlenecks which were there. There has been considerable improvement in the global supply chain situation. New alignments are being developed. Countries are, looking at new sources of supply. United States is looking at, there's this whole talk of China plus one. United States is looking at a situation where the semiconductor supply, they develop alternate sources, that is alternate to China. Yeah. So I think countries will find their way of improving the supply situation, in which event there could be a moderation in the, inflation numbers going forward. And also, it all depends on the kind of, the kind of slowdown, to what extent the depth of the slowdown that countries are going to experience. 6 months ago, the expectation around global slowdown, global recession was much more grim than it is today. 6 months ago, everybody thought that there will be a recession in the European Union. I'm not ruling out that possibility, but it has improved considerably. United States also looked as if they will face a recession, but United States also may avoid a recession and perhaps just have a growth slowdown at best, and maybe a mild or a soft recession for a very, very temporary period. So there are so many uncertainties. Possibility of a high for long is very much there, but these are the, these are the uncertainties, these are the variables which one has to factor in. Very difficult. Last line again, very long answer. The bottom line is that given the uncertainties, one has to be prepared for all eventualities.
So, if it is high for long, you've not said it for India, I accept that. But I want to ask you, you've raised repo rates 5 times. How long do you think it takes for the cumulative interest rate hikes that you've done, A, to be translated by the banking system, and B, to have the kind of effect that you had in mind while raising those interest rates? How much time does it take in your eyes?
You see, normally it takes about minimum 7 to 8 months for the impact to really play out, so far as inflation or any other, all other, the outcome of any monetary policy tightening or monetary policy easing. In the easing cycle, the liquidity also, if because injecting liquidity is much easier. So therefore, from that angle, the actual impact plays out faster. In a tightening cycle, pulling out liquidity takes time, so therefore it takes that much more time. So it takes at least 7 to 8 months for the impact to be felt. Our researchers in RBI, of course, it does not reflect the views of the RBI. In the report on currency and finance, which was done 2 years ago, our researchers in RBI concluded that it will take about 4 quarters for the impact to be felt.
1 full year.
That is what they sort of say, that was their view. And they did not say it in that way, they said it in the context of definition of failure of monetary policy. Instead of being 3 quarters, it should be 4 quarters. So in that context, they had said. But I would say that it would take about at least 7 to 8 months for the impact to be felt.
So should I infer that it could remain high for that long for you to have the desired effect?
No. Let us say we take a decision today, the impact of that decision will be felt 7 months down the road.
Okay. Fine. But do you think this is the right instrument, Mr. Das? This is the important question, because I was just reading an article by Joseph Stiglitz, I'm sure you've read the same, where he invokes Maslow, saying to a man with a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And he says that central banks across the world are using a sledgehammer approach to tame this variety of inflation. And this is not the right instrument, because it will have the opposite effect. It will not bring down this kind of inflation. On the other hand, it will bring down growth. Now, you may disagree with him, but is there a grain of truth to what he's saying?
You see, I'd like to add 2 points. Given the fact that the current inflation is largely, to a great extent, let me say that to a great extent it is supply side driven factors.
Sure.
It's mostly supply side driven. Given that being the real situation that is prevailing today, a coordinated action between the monetary and fiscal authorities is very important. Sure. In the context of India, I am happy to mention that there has been a coordinated action between the monetary and fiscal authorities. The government has reduced the taxes on petrol and diesel twice during this period. Taxes, that is the import duties on import of pulses, on edible oil and several other food items have also been reduced. There were some restrictions put on steel exports. So there have been measures taken by the government with regard to to deal with the supply side issues. In the monetary policy side, we have taken out a lot of liquidity. In fact, I would say that the problem of we are through the Chakravyuh, we are out of the Chakravyuh of liquidity. We have increased the policy rates by 225 basis points. Now, central bank has to do it for two reasons. One is to sober down the demand side. Let me not say contraction of, let me not say compression of demand. Let me just say that rebalancing the demand and supply. Because if the prices are more, obviously the demand is in excess of the supply. So therefore you have to rebalance, you have to balance supply and demand. That is the first thing that the central bank monetary policy action does. The second thing, which is very important, is that it provides an anchor to inflation expectations. Inflation expectations, widespread, large amount, several research in several countries have shown, you will know very well, that inflation expectations do play a major role in the future inflation trajectory. If the market, if the stakeholders in the economy feel that the central bank is tolerant of higher inflation, what will it mean? It will mean everybody will start pricing their products, assuming that the inflation will remain at the current level or will go up further, and the central bank will do nothing. So, inaction on the part of the central bank will fuel further inflation expectations, which in turn will be, self-fulfilling. It will give further push to inflation. So therefore, central bank has a primary role in this. Coming to your point that it will lead to a contractionary situation. It will slow down growth. Some amount of growth slowdown can happen, but there is the policy challenge for each central bank, depending on their domestic context, to keep in mind the requirements of growth. Up to what, to what extent you can push the envelope, up to what extent you can, do it, in the sense that it should not be totally detrimental to the, growth objectives and detrimental to your, employment and your growth situation. I use the word employment because in the United States, mostly it is, they go by the employment numbers. In countries like India, we go by the growth numbers, the GDP numbers.
How much sobering of demand are you expecting, Mr. Das? Because, a new credit cycle for the banking system has just begun. Do you think it will be thwarted or reined in by this kind of moderation in demand? Because I was speaking to a banker this morning who made the point that they're still not seeing that kind of enthusiasm on the part of corporates to take up credit in a large way. It's still retail.
You are right. The credit growth so far has been largely retail in India in this cycle. And, but my sense that I get from our interaction with bankers is that they have started receiving proposals for wholesale credit. And I do believe that given the importance which is being given by the policy authorities to, let us say, to renewables and to several other sectors like renewables, there will be big demand for credit from the, domestic banking sector. And lot of credit was availed by our domestic corporate houses, particularly, in the, during 2020 or 21. From the overseas markets. So they have met their funds requirement by going to overseas markets at that time. Now the focus is turning more towards the domestic segment, to the domestic, meaning our Indian banks, the banks in India, because there the rates have started going up. And they are all pricing further increases, and there is also uncertainty how much of increase US and other countries will do. So wholesale credit, I think there are signs that it is picking up. Given the fact that our economy has held up very well and it remains resilient, I think going forward we should see, more of wholesale credit demand coming up. investment cycle, the current GDP growth is sustained mostly by consumption and by investment demand. But investment demand till now has come from government capex. The private capex cycle, I think, is showing some signs of improvement. And going forward, it should pick up further because capacity utilization of the manufacturing sector, our last survey for Q2 showed that capacity utilization for manufacturing sector is around 75%. Even seasonally adjusted capacity utilization was around 75%. Services exports are doing very well. Domestic services sector are doing very well. So I think going forward, we should see some pickup in wholesale credit also.
You mentioned services, which reminds me that I wanted to ask you about, on the point of inflation, do you think there is some stickiness in core services inflation, which is a problem that you need to be very mindful of? Because we speak a lot about imported, please finish your word, drink your water. There's a lot of...
You can make your question slightly longer.
Okay. I'll take a leaf out of your book from your answers. Now, I was saying that there's a lot of focus on imported inflation in discussions on inflation, but I think people speak less about core services inflation. Do you think that could be a fairly significant part of the problem?
You see, core inflation is definitely... Give me a moment.
Of course.
You see, core inflation is certainly an area of concern. We have highlighted in the last monetary policy statement, if you see the minutes of the resolution of the last monetary policy committee meeting, the focus was on core inflation. In my policy statement, I had also devoted considerable amount, focus, I had given focus on core inflation. Core inflation still remains sticky around 6%. The number which came out yesterday, core inflation is about 6.1%. The previous month was about 6%. Although the momentum of core inflation within that seems to have slightly moderated, but the point remains that core inflation remains sticky at 6%. And that is not a very comfortable number to deal with. So therefore, we have to keep, as I said earlier, in my last monetary policy statement, we have to be very vigilant and we have to really keep focus on the core part of the inflation because that is becoming sticky and we have to see, and that is something which has to be dealt with. The supply side measures taken by the government, the easing of supply chain bottlenecks internationally and also within India, I think all these factors will probably have their impact and the monetary policy action taken which we started in May. I think going forward, they should start working in a more visible or pronounced manner so far as core inflation is concerned. But at the moment, we have to continue the focus on core inflation or as I said, the Arjuna's eye has to be maintained on, kept on core inflation.
Back to growth. You spoke about the moderation in demand. Now, if there is a significant sobering of demand in the coming year, plus cost of capital goes up for companies, could we be saddled at the end of this credit cycle with another set of bad assets like we had in the previous round? NPLs go up again over 4 or 5 years.
You see, cost of capital, if you have to see it in real terms. Real terms would be taking into account the inflation. We cannot just go by the nominal number of the interest rate. You have to see it as what is the real interest rate, taking into account net of inflation. Now, with regard to your point on bad assets, we have over the last 3 to 4 years, starting with 2019, particularly in the post, a lot of steps have been taken before that. I'm not trying to say that it all happened now. Number of steps have been taken by the RBI over the years, but especially in the last 3 years, post ILFS and post all those bad asset problem which the banks faced, we have really sort of tightened our supervision. And the kind of things which we are now looking at in the banks, in the NBFC sector, we didn't do it earlier. We have developed early warning signals. We are looking into the business models of banks. Our information system in terms of the data that we get from the banks, that has been further improved. So we get, almost on a real-time basis. Real-time is, I think, will be a bit of exaggeration. I would say that it's an ongoing process now. The supervision by RBI is an ongoing process where we keep on monitoring not only the numbers, but we, within each bank, within each NBFC, particularly the bigger ones, we look at where the credit growth is happening, what is the build-up in bad assets, if any. Like, for example, retail credit has picked up over the last 1 year. We are always mindful of, within retail credit, what is the stress level? What is the bad asset level? Bad asset level is 91 days or more of, overdues. But within that, we have in our system, we have overdues which are more than 30 days, overdues of more than 60 days. So we monitor that. So the moment we see that in a particular sector or in a particular bank, or, there is some stress is developing, we immediately sort of become alert, and we have internal red flagging systems, we have early warning signals, and we immediately flag it to the banks concerned.
Is it at a micro level?
Sorry?
Is it at a bank level also?
It is at a bank level.
Individual bank level?
It is at individual bank level. It is also at the level of individual large NBFCs.
Okay.
And so we immediately flag the issue. And that is why we have also advised the banks to really make their risk management committees, their audit committees more functional, more, more robust. We have issued some guidelines for that. And we just convey it to the banks and request them that you examine it, go back, discuss in your board, take a view what is happening, take whatever mitigation measures are required, please do take it and inform us. So therefore, I think there is a great awareness even among the banks. The banks themselves, I am happy to point out that and the banks themselves today are much more concerned about the problem of rising bad assets.
Yeah.
So I think overall the whole, the whole banking culture, if I can say, that the prudence, a culture of prudence has developed in the Indian banking sector over the last few years.
Going by the metrics that you just spoke about, would something like the ICICI Bank Videocon case have propped up as a red flag alert with the RBI? That too many loans are going to one group, not backed by enough kind of assets. Would it have showed up?
No, I would not, let me say that I don't want to comment on a specific case.
But it's a very large
No,
case.
I don't, it's not proper for me, being the regulator, to comment on a specific case. It's not proper, and I will not comment on any specific
would
case.
Something like
complete.
that?
No, I'll just complete. It's a specific case of that, I'm not commenting on the specific case. But in general terms, I would like to say that, RBI is not sitting in the bank monitoring each and every check payment, monitoring each and every loan sanction. It's not our job. It is the bank has got a risk management committee, the bank has a credit sanction committee, the bank has a board of directors, the bank has a senior management, a qualified professional CEO assisted by a lot of senior management. It is their responsibility to do the due diligence. We cannot be looking into the kind of loan appraisal and the due diligence which a bank does in each and every case. That's not our job, and that's not desirable. For God's sake, if RBI or any regulator in any country gets into those areas, you are you will kill the credit, you will create, it will sort of be highly detrimental to the credit effect. So therefore, individual cases of failure, they could be due to business failure also. There are, situations where there could be business failure also. But individual cases of failure, it's not possible for the Reserve Bank, because we cannot put ourselves into the role of into the chair of the credit sanction committee of the bank. So we monitor the overall numbers, we monitor the sectors. We don't really look at individual cases of, how the loan was sanctioned. But yes, if a large portfolio, there is slippage, that overdues are building up, if it's a large loan, we would certainly flag it to the bank that, need to focus on these kind of large portfolios.
I was hardly blaming you, sir. You seem to have taken it personally. I was asking whether it would show up in your searches. I was not blaming the RBI for the ICICI Bank video one case at all.
No, not that way. I think it needs to be examined. Did I sound as if I was trying to? No, I didn't see it that way. I didn't see it that way. I didn't see it that way at all. What I'm saying is that our systems, you asked whether the system that we have, whether it will be able to focus on, pick up a case like the one you mentioned. In that context, I said that we cannot become the appraisal authority in a bank. Sure. To that extent, I just clarified the RBI's role. We look at individual portfolios, and if there is a very large loan and if it is showing signs of stress, naturally it will be noticed. And before us, it is actually the first line of defense. In any financial system, the first line of defense has to be the bank management itself.
Sure. Let me rephrase the question in a different way on the same subject. There's a report which came out last week, authored by Sucheta Dalal, where she points out that in the IDBI Bank case, almost all the loans which were made to a group called the Seva Group came from public sector banks. Do you think, or would you agree, that public sector banks are most susceptible to such kind of dubious loan practices which end up in scams and therefore leading to large NPAs? Or is it an unfair assessment?
No, I don't want to comment on individual cases of, what happened in this case, that case. I would not like to comment on that case. The improvement in the banking sector over the last few years is both in the public and private sector. So it will not be fair to just pick up the public sector and say that, this has happened in the public sector. Today, the functioning into the prudent management, all the improvement in terms of governance is visible both in public and private sector banks. So it will not be correct to generalize and put all the public sector banks in one, bracket them and put them into one basket. There might have been individual instances in individual banks. It will not be correct to generalize on that basis.
Okay. My colleagues have a few questions, but before that I want to ask one question on your recent comments on cryptocurrencies. You made a statement that they might be triggering the next financial crisis. It could come from there. Do you think they should be banned?
RBI's position is very clear. It should be banned.
All of them. No activity should be allowed in cryptocurrency.
The technology needs to be supported. The technology of blockchain needs to be supported because the technology has got so many other applications. Again, it will become, I can see the clock there, so it will become again a large answer. So I will try to paraphrase it as much as possible. You see, why we are saying it is going to be, apart from the commonly known dangers of, money laundering, terror funding, what are the principal concerns that we have? First thing is, what is crypto? People call it, some people call it as an asset, some people call it as a financial product. But you will agree that every asset, every financial product has to have some underlying. In the case of crypto, there is no underlying. And I had said it in some press conference that not even a tulip, alluding to the Dutch tulip mania. There is no underlying. The increase in the market price of crypto, various kinds of crypto which start at a particular price, then it multiplies over, in a matter of few weeks or few months. It is based on a make-believe that this is worth so much or it will go up to such and such level. So anything without any underlying, whose valuation is dependent entirely on make-believe, is nothing but 100% speculation, or to put it very bluntly, It is gambling. Now, in our country, we don't allow gambling. If you want to allow gambling, treat it as a gambling and lay down the rules for gambling. But that's not a financial product. So therefore, crypto masquerading as a financial product or a financial asset is a completely misplaced argument. And the bigger, more macro reason for what we are saying is that you see crypto, so-called crypto assets or cryptocurrencies have the potential, they have the characteristics of becoming a means of exchange. That is, they can become a means of exchange of doing a transaction. And most of it is dollar denominated. So if you allow it to grow, assume a situation where 20% of our transactions in the economy, 20% I'm mentioning an ad hoc number, 20% of the transactions in the economy is taking place through cryptos which are not issued by the central bank. It is issued by private companies which are placed all over the world. The Reserve Bank, being the monetary authority of the country as the central bank, will lose control over the money supply in the economy. We will lose control over 20% of the transactions in our economy. Reserve Bank's ability, the central bank's ability to decide monetary policy, to decide on the liquidity of, the level of liquidity that needs to be maintained, the level of money supply, M3, that has to be maintained in the economy, the Reserve Bank's authority to that extent will get undermined. It will lead to a dollarization of the economy. And please believe me, these are not empty alarm signals or empty, this can happen. 1 year ago, in the Reserve Bank, we had said that this whole thing is likely to collapse sooner than later. And if you see the developments over the last 1 year, climaxing in the FTX episode, I think I don't need to add anything more.
Okay. My colleague Saurav Majumdar from Business Today magazine has a question for you, Mr. Das. Saurav?
Yeah. Good evening, Governor. Good evening. I just wanted to say, you spoke your views on crypto, which you just elaborated on just now, very well known. RBI has just rolled out the CBDC. There is some confusion yet about what the CBDC will do and how it will play out. It will be great if you can just throw some light on what the CBDC exactly will entail. Another little question attached to that is, not strictly related to CBDC, but about the digital, the whole digital initiatives of banks. Now, they're hugely, under pressure in terms of the core banking, which we discussed earlier in the course of the discussions. Now, what are the risks you see as the regulator in terms of banks going increasingly digital? And as the regulator, what are you telling them to do? Because digital is a given.
The digital part, the systems have to be very robust. The basic IT systems of banks will have to be very robust. Data privacy is an issue. There has to be adequate safeguards to, I think there are a large number of bankers here. They are much better placed to reply to this question. But let me say that issues of data privacy, issues of robustness of the technology, the IT system itself, the focus has to be on that. And many banks are also actively engaged with many big tech companies. So the challenge to the banks is that it should not lead to a situation where the banks, where the big techs come and sort of start dominating the banks. The banks should take their own decisions. The bank should not be swallowed by the big techs, but the bank should utilize the technology and the service provided by the big techs. And they can develop various kinds of partnerships or arrangements, etc. Coming to CBDCs, CBDC is a currency. It's a currency system. People compare it with UPI. UPI is a payment system. CBDC is a currency system. Now, it's just like cash, paper currency. It is just like paper currency. You go to a shop, you pay money to the shopkeeper, he gives you the whatever you are buying, your settlement is done. CBDC also, it is instant settlement. The money, the currency, digital currency, the e-rupee will flow from your wallet to the wallet of the merchant without the intermediation of the bank. So it will become faster, apart from issues of saving on logistics, cost of printing, etc. I think CBDC is the, is the future money. Large number of countries are working on CBDCs. Technology is becoming more and more robust in this area. We cannot be left behind. We have to be there. And it is going to be the shape of future money. Settlement is going to be quicker. So, but the technology will have to be very robust and very safe. We have to ensure that, it's not cloned or it's not counterfeited. So therefore, the trial which we have launched, we are being very careful about it. There are many experiences, many learnings which are coming and which will come out of the wholesale and the retail trials which we are doing. So I think we are sort of getting ready for the future.
One question, Mr. Das, I should ask you quickly before I ask my colleagues to join in is about the last quarter's current account deficit and the fact that the rupee was doing quite well against other currencies. But by the end of the year, I think if you look at it versus many other emerging market currencies, it's not done that well. Should one be worried about the current account deficit and what it could do to the rupee this year?
Okay, now this whole debate of, it's a common way of people saying the day the rupee depreciates or at the end of the year they say that, rupee is the worst performing currency and all. China grew on the back of a weak currency and reached where they are today. So if the currency is strong or weak, it has to be seen in relative terms. It has to be seen in a proper context. So I don't enter into that
whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. Yeah.
Good or bad, weak or strong. I'm not entering into that. So far as RBI is concerned, the rupee is, the exchange rate is market driven. Yeah. Now, your main question is on the current account deficit. The first quarter number this year, it's very easy. Incidentally, the numbers are quite easy to remember because the first quarter, the current account deficit was 2.2%. We have corrected the number, it's 2.2%. The second quarter became 4.4%, and the average for the first half is 3.3%. So therefore, it's quite easy to remember. Okay. But in other words, on a more serious note, the CAD, the current account deficit for the first half of the year is 3.3%. But having said that, October and November, the situation is showing great amount of improvement. Merchandise, the trade deficit is moderating. Imports have come down, benefiting also from, the decline in commodity prices. On the other hand, services exports have picked up and they're doing very well at the moment. And that is with regard to the current account deficit. So we do expect the current account deficit of the current year to be eminently manageable so far as RBI is concerned, and so far as financing of current account deficit is concerned. Remittances are doing very well. The World Bank projects that India will receive $100 billion of remittances this year. But and the growth, the World Bank has projected 10 or 12%. But the first half itself, the growth is almost 20%. So remittances are doing very well. FDI, net FDI from, up to end October has been about 22 billion. Net FPI up to end of December has been about 11 billion or so. The figures may be a little here and there, but broadly these are the numbers. So to sum it up, I would say that the current account deficit of our, there is improvement visible. It will be manageable, eminently manageable. Financing of it also will be, is going to be fairly comfortable. And the reserves, I should also add that our forex reserves, which had gone down to 524 billion, they have again come back to 562 billion. Today we would have released by now, the figure for last Friday, which is I think 561.5 billion or so. But that's mostly because of revaluation, some valuation changes. So, but still it is in the region of 561, 562 billion, which in all parameters, taking into account all parameters of measurement of adequacy of reserves, is very comfortable.
You know, you've been RBI governor for what, more than 4 years now, Mr. Das? If you look at the previous stints of your predecessors, the one thing which was common is that almost every 6 months or so, there would be some signs of strain between the RBI and the government. Pulls and pressures, differences in opinion. None of that seems to be visible right now. So your admirers or supporters would say that's because you've mastered the art of relationship management with the finance ministry. No, I mean it as a compliment. But your critics would say that you are too compliant with the government, and in that you've sacrificed some of the central bank's autonomy. What is the truth between these two?
I think it's for you to judge.
No.
It's for you to judge. So, no, somebody has to tell specifically where the central bank has compromised its autonomy. Making, sweeping statements is not fair. Somebody has to say where we have compromised on our autonomy. Initially, there was this talk of surplus transfer and all that, but surplus transfer was determined and decided by the recommendations of the Bimal Jalan committee, which has been accepted by everybody. So it was the calculation which our accounts department placed it before the audit committee, and that is the surplus number which is coming. I have no discretion to increase the surplus transfer or to decrease the surplus transfer. It is audited and the numbers are placed in the public domain. Everybody knows about it. Autonomy basically means autonomy in decision making. I'm not commenting on, any other. I will just focus on my tenure. I think in any institution, whether it is central bank vis-a-vis the government, or it is, it is between, let us say, a management of a company with its board of directors. In any institution, in any organization, interface with others requires consultations, requires active engagement. So without proper engagement, there could be areas of communication gap. So we should not allow that situation to develop. In my first press conference when I took over in December 2018, I had said that my approach would be consultative and I will constantly engage with the government to explain to the government why we have done, why we have done what we have done. That does not mean that I have compromised our position. But I think as the government should know the background of important decisions. When we do, for example, the monetary policy increases, we have been able to do it. Nobody has prevented us, nobody has stopped us from doing it, contrary to what may be the perception outside. We have done what we wanted to do. The Monetary Policy Committee, constituted by the government, Monetary Policy Committee did took decisions. So I think ultimately at the end of the day, what is important is to maintain good communication and to constantly engage. I think that engagement and that communication between the government and the RBI is very important. Having said that, it's not as if there have not been any differences of opinion on certain individual issues. But all those issues have been internally resolved through discussions.
One question from my colleague Siddharth Zarabi. Siddharth.
Thank you very much. Governor, you spent a lot of time in North Block.
Mike.
Governor, you spent a lot of time in North Block and now at Mint Street, as we call it. And you covered a lot of ground in this interaction. My question is very simple. Going forward, is monetary policy going to be a T20, a one-day, or a test match? And I ask this question because many in the audience may perhaps know you have some interest in cricket. So I use that opportunity to pose that question to you.
I have great interest in cricket, so we can hold another session on cricket if you wish. But, having worked in the North Block, I think what is also important is that, I know the corridors of North Block. I know which, corridor takes a right bend where, or a left bend where. Now I'm familiar in the Reserve Bank, so I can close my eyes and enter into Reserve Bank and reach my office. I know where we to take a turn. So on a more serious note, I think you cannot classify it as a T20 or a limited over 50 over the. You see, Virat Kohli is good in T20. He is good in limited over one-day cricket. He is also good in Test cricket. So the RBI has to function and perform both in a T20 match, in a 50-over match, as well as in a Test cricket. Our effort. Our effort and endeavor is always to optimize our performance to the best extent that we can. We put our best foot forward.
Governor, we are out of time, but thank you very much for a great session, and thank you very much for accepting our invitation today. A great pleasure talking to you today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for your patient hearing. I think we have overshot the time,
That's all right.
primarily for my, I think, longish answers, but I thought it was necessary. I can see your colleagues are getting very impatient, but thank you once again. Thank you very much for inviting.
Thank you so much, Governor. And thank you then. Right, do take your seats for our next session. Banking on the competitive edge. Doyen Mukherjee is still with us. Let me welcome on stage our next set of panelists. Kaustubh Kulkarni, Senior Country Officer, India and Vice Chairman, Asia Pacific, JP Morgan, India. Hitendra Dave, CEO, HSBC, India. Ashu Kular, CEO, Citibank, India. V. Vaidyanathan, MD and CEO, IDFC First Bank. And Piyush Singh, Lead Africa, India and Middle East, Accenture. Please welcome our guests this evening as we take forward this conversation here today.
Welcome once again, ladies and gentlemen. This is not according to... Hello? No, but you'll have to speak eventually.
Try again. Oh.
Hello.
He just put it on. No?
Somebody has a mic in the audience.
Could we have the mics, please? Yeah.
Hello. Does this work? Okay. Welcome once again. Sorry, this is not according to plan, but I guess the minister's running late, so we are doing this session before the ministers. Can you hear me at the back? Yes, you can. Welcome all of you. And I won't introduce you individually because I want to ask all of you what you took away from the RBI's discussion. Hitendra, you want to go first? What did you take away? What stuck with about what the governor just told us?
No, I think
think I hope everyone felt what I felt, that, you know, I hope everyone felt what I felt, that we have the right central bank governor at the right time, I think. You know, I've been watching the financial markets quite closely. It's still not working?
No, you can.
Just keep saying no, it's not working. So I think, you know, I've been working in the financial markets for a long time. I think the kind of decisions the Reserve Bank has taken in the last 4 years have been quite tremendous. I think people forget that when he came in, you know, the previous MPC was looking at output gaps narrowing, inflation everywhere. They were seeing growth was sizzling hot, and within 3 months you could see it was completely a wrong reading. And he, at the risk of sounding like the government's man, actually was the one who triggered that change. From then to what the MPC or the RBI did during the COVID period, not just the monetary policy decisions, but the decisions taken outside the monetary policy, and then the unwinding. I think he mentioned it himself. So I think the one takeaway is, I think at least the monetary policy part of, or the Reserve Bank or the regulatory part of our economy is in good and safe hands. Plus, I think some of the things that he called out, crypto, etc., I think it would have taken a brave man a year back to say what he did. And I think you know, it's a reassuring every time to hear him. That's what I would say.
And Vaidyanathan, on the insistence on the core inflation point, which he made, I hope you heard what he said about keeping the Arjuna's eye on core inflation. Does that give you the sense that in February another rate hike is coming? They're not quite done yet?
I joined a bit late, so I missed that Arjuna matter, but we can clearly see that RBI is keeping the Arjuna kind of focus. But to your previous question, since I wasn't there, the part which stayed with me from this conversation was that RBI is there for all seasons, and they're there for all seasons. I thought it really important.
Ashu, if you heard what he had to say about the credit cycle for wholesale loans, he was optimistic despite the fact that a lot of companies have still not started investing in new capacities in a significant way. He said it will come, but it is different from the previous cycle. Your thoughts, because you are largely a wholesale lender now, what is your sense of what he said about that?
Yeah, then mea culpa, I came a bit late, I missed it. If you still want me to comment on the point, I could.
Yeah.
But certainly one of the things which always strikes me with Governor Das is the share. You feel he's a man who you want at the helm. You know, when the things get tough, and he's obviously demonstrated it in spade over the last 4+ years he's been the helm. But I think we've obviously seen the wholesale credit pick up more, mainly because of the inflationary impact on the working capital, some of the diversion to the NBFC side. I do think some of it is going to probably ease off. I think what we are all waiting for is the pickup on the private capex cycle, where it seems well poised. Certainly the balance sheets are ready and certain sectors are picking up now. So I think that's going to be the big driver from our perspective, which we're all waiting for.
When do you think that will pick up, the serious capex?
Well, we hope in the next 12 months.
Next 12 months?
Well, I think you're set for it, right?
Piyush, what's your assessment of when we can see a serious capex jerk?
Yeah, look, I think the point I'd go back to what the governor said was around the capacity utilization.
Yeah,
you start
75%.
75% capacity utilization, and then you combine that with consumer confidence, which still remains quite high, right? And the third part with slight inflation slowdown, so the pricing effect of increase in volume starting to neutralize. I do think we are in for a slightly more positive corporate intake of capacity utilization and capacity borrowing and expansion. So yeah, I would think the next 12 months is a very interesting period for corporate loan book expansion.
Cost of the fly, and one of the flies in the ointment could be the global situation, because a lot of the companies are watching what's going on globally, and other than lower capacity utilization, that might be stalling their plans a little bit. I mean, what's your perspective from JP Morgan?
I think from JP Morgan perspective, just to complete the first part, if you look at the total borrowing of the largest companies in India in the last 6 years, the absolute level of borrowing is roughly the same. Yeah. However, the debt to equity and debt to cash flow ratios for the same large cap companies is at the lowest or the best level ever, which means they need slightly more confidence maybe on utilization, but more importantly, so the largest companies may end up deploying capex in new initiatives, new type of industries, creating capacity for different industries. So I think all of those discussions are very much seriously underway, and the larger companies will not only invest in their existing businesses, however, they will in fact start investing in new businesses just because where the cycle is and how they want to position their overall business for the future. And that does not have any bearing, just to conclude, on where the global cycle is, because the global cycle just is a recalibration to a lower growth. That's about it. Otherwise, credit markets are functioning well. Equity markets have bottomed or started functioning reasonably okay. And Indian markets have continued to function well with abundant liquidity. So there is no real concern that we see from the large caps why they should be unduly worried about starting their capex.
Hitendra, you've seen previous capex cycles. Does this one look a little different from the previous serious capex cycle that we had in many ways?
Yeah, no, so I have a slightly divergent view. I don't think we are going to get the kind of credit cycles we have seen in the past. I think those 50,000, 60,000, 70,000 crore ultra mega power plants, people buying, people setting up very large cement capacity, steel capacity, or even in infrastructure roads. I think the banking system has learnt, okay? I think it's learnt that they were the equity provider and they were the debt provider and there was nothing else at the back end. So let's hope it doesn't happen again. And I don't think even the Indian industry is thinking like that, because now the industry rightly is going to ask for proof of equity and proof of clean equity and be much more stressing the projections. So I think that cycle, according to me, is not coming back. I don't think 70, 80,000 crore projects are coming back. Not in the next 12 months, not in the next, I think, quite some time. And it's not too bad, actually, if more of it is getting funded from non-banking and, either the equity or other cycles. But my own sense is the credit growth that we are experiencing even now, I think we are at least seeing much more demand for credit from smaller companies now who are, the anywhere from 50 crores all the way to say 2,000-3,000 crore kind of turnover. I think these companies are growing at a much faster clip than large companies. They are exploring and identifying markets internationally as well, doing quite well. So I think you will have credit growth, but it won't be the spectacular 30,000, 50,000 crore types. It will be much more smaller and granular. So, and that's also because banking system has also tightened its concentration norms and credit norms as well. So that's my sense.
Piyush, you agree with that?
Exuberance is not going to be there, but I also think that there's going to be additional factor, hopefully, of new age investments, right? So you're talking about new initiatives. I'm talking about new age investments. Automobile sector disruption. EVs. That's going to be the case. Potentially, new power sources, hydrogen. That's hopefully that's going to be bringing in, and then supply chain disruptions. That's going to be another area of investment, right? And the last but not the least, I would say, where the banking sector will have to go in a partnership with corporates is going to be encouraging them to invest in sorting their internals in order to become more efficient. Not a forte of banking sector. It normally looks at market. This is more about internal efficiencies, but that requires some serious investments as well right now, and it will have to go into that as well.
Ashu, you're in an interesting situation because you've exited the consumer finance business and you're focusing on wholesale. But in the last 5 years, the money has been made in retail and it's not been made on the wholesale side of the book at all. So what is giving you the confidence that consumer is not the space to be, but wholesale is?
Yeah, so I think each bank needs to play to their competitive strengths. I think the decision which Citi took, which was a global decision, by the way, not specific to India, is our capital is best served in terms of a long-term sustainable competitive advantage for us and for our customers in providing a network and globality to our corporate clients and institutional clients, right? And by the way, every bank has a different model. For us, lending is a part of the stream, but what our focus is on is how do we cross-sell our core lending into getting revenues on the investment banking side, market side, transaction services side, right? So we need to be careful. I think we've had actually a very, very profitable institutional business. And while our consumer business was obviously the more, it's the kind of brand out there, and it's been a terrific brand and customers have loved it, I think the returns in the institutional business, and certainly the proportion of revenues and more importantly the proportion of profitability, has always been higher. I personally right now feel super excited about the opportunities we have in the way, the India has been dealt a very, very good hand right now in terms of the absolute has always been there, but the relative story in India is so remarkable, so unique. And as a foreign bank, and we have a couple of my colleagues here as well, I think we are very well poised to add value in that, for India to exploit, whether it's getting FDI in, portfolio investment in, helping Indian companies, including the MSMEs, which Hitendra talked about, letting them go global, helping them get more efficient with digitization. So I think this is a very exciting time for us.
Vaidyanathan, what's your perspective on what this new credit cycle will belong to? Because as I said, last 5 years, wholesale was a bad word. I mean, the market rewarded banks which were more retail than wholesale. But do you think as this credit cycle fleshes out, wholesale will also have its time in the sun?
I do believe so. I think, we know that the sector lost close to about 8 to 9 lakh crores of write-offs and provisions in wholesale credit the last 8 or 10 years. State banks alone, state-owned banks alone, so it's insane. But I think people have been scalded a lot, and I think people have been careful. But I think the next big growth cycle, apart from corporate, it will be moderate, but the big growth cycle coming in retail. Retail, I don't mean, let me just tell you, we typically use retail as 3 components. One is retail as consumer credit, like home loans, car loans, personal credit cards, etc. Second is MSME credit. Third is the agricultural credit.
Yeah.
But let me just talk, just the retail credit, personal credit. That market in India today is about 44 lakh crores as of March of 22, probably it's now about 2 to 3 lakh crores. That's about $600 billion. That number, I tried to do a back of envelope calculation, compounding it to be 70-80% or 50-60% for the next 8 years. It's touching 2030, that $600 billion will touch $1.5 trillion. Just think about it. So that's one big growth coming up in that space. So that is one big growth. Second thing is quality, because book can grow all over the world, and consumer credit has grown elsewhere. In terms of quality, I believe that India has created certain structural cards around retail credit today, which is not even existing even 8 years ago. And those structural cards are very, very important.
For example, one structural card is bureau. Now, I was doing the maths that 2017, the number of trade lines on credit bureau was about 500 million. Trade lines, every single loan is a trade line, not unique customers, trade lines. Today, 2.2 trillion trade lines exist on the bureau. And 5 years ago, data quality was not great. Today, data quality is good. 5 years ago, awareness of bureau was not great. People are not so sensitive. Today, everybody is sensitive about the bureau score. So that's a very structural guard. There are many more, but we'll talk as long.
I think on that structural point, there's a lot's been written about the uptake in digital payments. But the underlying story of that is the amount of structured data that is getting created in the retail sector. And on a lighter note, I thought you were about to ask him, like you asked the governor, how much of hair did he lose because of the last cycle and cleaning of the corporate book?
Hey, no. You're accusing me of being terribly insensitive. I'm not, believe me. But, Kaustav, how does a global bank like yours see India? Because, global banks have had a mixed kind of pedigree or history in India. Some have succeeded, some have pulled out some of their businesses, some have come and lingered. It's not seen as a force in that sense in India. But where does JP Morgan fit in here?
Yeah, I think you're right that different banks have had different approaches in terms of how they want to look at India. I think if I look at, like Ashu mentioned, ours is also, there are 2 large businesses for us in India. One is, of course, our revenue business, which is a wholesale bank business that we have. And there is a very substantial corporate center that JP Morgan has in India, right? So if you focus on the wholesale business, structurally our business is meaningfully larger in revenue today than what it was certainly 5 years ago. And just each of the building blocks that now we have for us in India have reached a critical scale where we believe it could take off at a much faster growth than what we have been able to achieve in the past. Because only when you reach a certain critical scale on each of the businesses, whether it's payments, transaction services, investment banking, markets, etc., then it starts moving the needle for us on a global basis. So where is the incremental growth for business, for global banks going to come from when the whole world is going to grow at 1.7% versus 3%? It's going to grow from economies and countries and businesses which are going to go faster. And India, certainly, if you start looking at it, is going to go faster. And the second key thing, we discussed about drivers for growth and drivers for capex and consumer cycle. I think the big shift that you are already seeing in the data, which even the governor referred to, is rural and urban. What is currently happening in India is a massive amount of incremental credit growth is actually coming in from semi-urban and urban areas. And again, that cycle is just getting started. So if this cycle continues the way it is, the rates stabilize the way I think we are looking at, affordability indices are good. Even basic consumption themes have enough momentum to drive, therefore, business, and that retail business will drive our wholesale business faster.
Right. This bullishness is very evident, Hitendra, in your bank, because, while others might be pulling out of certain areas, you're doubling up investments. You've bought L&T mutual fund. So it looks like in all areas you seem to be quite bullish on your India prospects.
Well, I think it's very difficult not to be bullish about the country, right? I mean, if we are not bullish now, then there's something wrong with us. All of us as people, right? I mean, this is both on an absolute basis and on a relative basis. I think if you're looking at it, with a per capita income of $2,500 or so, and almost everyone thinks in the next 25 years this will multiply at a faster pace if we manage the economy well, at a faster pace than the GDP, right? The per capita GDP should. And once per capita GDP crosses $3,500 as China did, let's say 25, 30 years back, I think it's a J curve for everything, right? So I think that's one reason which is driving our bullishness. The second is very obviously, as India integrates more and more into trade globally, right? We export more, we import more. We're already a $1.5 trillion trade economy if I take services, imports and exports of goods put together. And HSBC is the world's trade bank, right? So you can see that as this 1.5 becomes 2, 2.5, 3, we will have business, coming out, and then we can compete with the domestic banks. In the retail, as you mentioned, I think, I think I at least tell our people, it is the first class banks locally, especially the private banks, but also some of the public sector banks, that basically kicked foreign banks out of retail banking. Okay, we can attribute whatever reason to it. We were just not good enough. Given certain decisions which have been spoken about, I think our sense is there is a space for one international bank to occupy the full space, right? From checking accounts, mortgages, credit cards, to investment banking, ECM, DCM, and the full process of corporate banking. We hope to be that bank. We hope we are good enough to grab the opportunity, because the opportunity is great. It's now for the management to demonstrate whether we are good enough to capture it or not. So therefore, that underpins our optimism.
Sure. I want to ask you, Vaidyanathan, because, you are a relatively new bank. And over the last few years, what we've seen is that public sector banks have ceded a lot of ground to private sector counterparts. But that game may now be about to change, because they've cleaned up their balance sheets. Now they're becoming very aggressive, led by State Bank of India. What does it mean for newer entrants like you and private peers of public sector companies like you?
See, I mentioned to you earlier how large the market's growing. I just told you that $1 trillion of consumer credit getting added. I told you the number. You can add close to about $600 billion getting added in the same period, 8 years, a bit for SME credit and agri credit. So it's a big story. And frankly, you're right, because even state-owned banks, these are doing a pretty good job in personal credit. I'll give you one statistic, that will tell you a story. Our company, you may call it a new bank, but actually if you add back our past history as a non-bank finance company, it's like 12 years now. In 2010, our loan book was 94 crores, retail. By 2018, it was 32,000 crores. Today, it's 1,10,000 crores. So, 100 crores to 1 lakh crores in 12 years. So, where does it come from? It's come from the same country. Because India is so underserved, unserved, all that. So, according to me, this story at 1 lakh crore is not going to stop here. It will become 2 lakh crore, 5 lakh crore, 10 lakh crore. It will go beyond my lifetime also. Why do I feel like that is also because India is fundamentally, one is of course growing, we know the numbers, but also India is fundamentally moving from being unorganized to organized, informal market to formal markets, unbranded markets to branded markets. And with the new digital technologies coming, you go deeper. So I believe the story is not going to change. It will just go on forever. State-owned banks will do well. Private banks will do well. Foreign banks, I'm just surprised that this gentleman pulled out. I'm so disappointed. Again and again, I say that. City of such a wonderful price. So, except that, I'd say that everybody will do well here. I mean, I shared some numbers.
Do you feel bad, Ashu, about that global decision? Because it seems like Citibank cards was so successful in India.
He doesn't seem very pleased with my joke, but...
No, listen.
Yeah, it looks glum.
Let's be clear. Emotionally, it's a very difficult decision.
Yeah.
We created the modern day consumer banking. I joined the bank on the institution side, and we used to see, the trailblazing and wonderful work which the consumer bank did. And I think to some extent, sometimes you, in your careers, reach a point where the strategic decision could vary with the emotional. Like every day I get very emotional customers who are going to miss, the cards business. I do believe strategically the decision which Jane took when she took over as CEO was the right decision. And by the way, our decision to exit consumer banking, not only in India but 14 other markets, is not mutually exclusive with us being bullish on India. I think it just means we're going to redeploy our capital and our focus. Let me give you a few facts then. Today, India is the second largest employee force for Citi after the US. Because we have, as both my colleagues have, apart from a bank, we have a vibrant service center, global capability center, which we're growing, 10,000 gross people every year, and I don't see that changing, okay? I think we also see you're going to compete in areas where you think you're going to have, as I said earlier, competitive advantage where the clients approve. This market is big enough for all of us, plus our public sector colleagues, to thrive in. But we must not...
Could I request everyone to take their seats, please? We're about to begin the next session. Our next conversation is on serving the nation, reinforcing the backbone of India's economy. I'd like to invite on stage Siddharth Zarabi, Managing Editor, Business Today TV, to welcome our next guest, Bhagwat Kishanrao Karad, Minister of State, Ministry of Finance. A very warm welcome, please, everybody. A big round of applause.
A very warm welcome and good evening once again to everyone. The Minister of State for Finance is here. We are weeks away from budget, so we will not be asking him any questions on budget. But Mantriji, the question that I wanted to really start and to get you to speak about is one of the key things that the Modi government has done in the last several years, which is financial inclusion. And you yourself as the Minister of State in the Ministry of Finance, how would you describe the financial inclusion effort and success and what its result is? The numbers are huge. We have one of the largest daily payment transactions network infrastructure that has been built. How crucial has this whole financial inclusion success story been of this government?
First of all, I congratulate Business Today, India Today and all groups for organizing a conclave for bankers, banking conclave and economic growth. In this evening, the question asked to me is regarding financial inclusion in Modi's government. Before starting the question, after declaring my portfolio, I went and met Honorable Prime Minister Modi ji. And I have asked while discussion, sir, please give me advice. He told me 3 sentences that we have given you a technical portfolio, and in this technical portfolio, you have to work on financial inclusion, financial literacy, and digital transactions. That was his words. Now you are coming or you are asking me regarding the financial inclusion. The aim of Modi government is banking for the unbankers, securing to the unsecured, and funding to the unfunded. In financial inclusions, we can say there are number of schemes to include in finances, particularly the poor people. In this, there are different schemes. So particularly, the scheme started for the poor people, or we can say street vendors. Pradhan Mantri Swanidhi Yojana. Before that, I will say Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana. I want to give the number around 47.63 crores, means 47 crore 63 lakhs. The new accounts are open in the banks. I congratulate all public sector banks and private sector banks for doing a nice work. Before Modi government, before Modi ji's government, if somebody goes to the bank, then naturally he has to fill some number of forms, he has to pay 5,000 rupees, and it will take time. But as per the Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana, the bank officers went to different colonies, different villages, and they have opened the account. And after opening the account, Pradhan Mantri Swanidhi Yojana, which I was telling to you, this Yojana, this scheme is for the poor people, street vendors. This is a very important scheme where the street vendors without any collateral gets the loan with the minimum criteria. The minimum criteria that is required is he must have his Aadhaar card, that is identification mark.
Right.
Second thing, he should have bank account, and third, he must be registered with local bodies. Not only that, there are different schemes in this financial inclusion. We can say mudra loans. In mudra loans, if somebody wants to do the business and he doesn't have anything to give for the collateral, so he will get a loan without any collateral from, we can say, 0 to up to 10 lakhs. So there are different schemes in financial inclusion, and I'm very much happy to say here the numbers in the financial inclusion, if we see, it is more particularly the women are getting more benefited. Women are also involved in this, and if you see the NPA also, NPA is also less. So this financial inclusion has given finances to the people with creation of the job, with a job.
You made a very good point about how women have also benefited through financial inclusion, and digital payments have reduced the dependence in many cases where the woman of the house had to be dependent on her husband to give her money. She now is empowered through this. The Prime Minister always talks about the JAM Trinity, Jan Dhan, Aadhaar, Mobile. From a banking perspective, Mantriji, if you could tell us,
What is the future? Is the future of public sector banking to open small branches in grams and talukas? Or do you think in the future, rural India, our Gramin population, can also become totally reliant on mobile banking?
One thing is important, as I said, digital transactions we in the government are always propagating for digital transactions, but at the same time, Government of India and particularly Department of Financial Services is taking care to include all villages and all peoples from the rural area also. If you see the figure, there is 99.96 involvement of the villages, particularly from the bank correspondents where the bank branches are not available, bank Sakhi and bank branches. Usually there is a lead district manager at the district level, and if there is a demand from anybody to open the bank, naturally we ask him, then the bank takes the survey and if possible they open the bank. But to have a banking facilities to everyone, if you see the last year's budget, in the last year's budget, it was declared that 1.5 lakh post offices will have a banking services. So, as it was declared in the budget, we from the Government of India has already, the post offices are having the banking services that we have done. So, I want to share with you that hardly I'm saying approximately 200 may be the villages where the bank services are not available. That may be in the hilly area, but almost all bankers, public sector banks and private sector banks, taking care to involve all rural population, and of course the urban population is almost involved.
Dr. Karad, there is another element which is always spoken about. This issue must have come to you also. This is the question about private sector bank versus public sector bank. Public sector banks have had a lot of social responsibility. Many people in public sector banks say private sector banks don't have those burdens. What is the future of Indian banking? Will both coexist, or will public sector banks continue to remain smaller vis-a-vis private sector banks, with the exception of State Bank of India?
For Indian economy, both bankings are important, public sector banking and private sector banks. And the different schemes which are particularly for the agriculture sector or for the poor sector, or the schemes, Government of India schemes, these different schemes are mostly, that is your observation or it is also my observation, are well done by the public sector banks as compared to private sector banks. But we from the Department of Financial Services, we always do analysis. Which private sector bank is not doing well, which doing is okay. So we always take care that the private sector banks also should work as the public sector banks are doing. I, being a state finance minister, I have visited around 21 states. I go there, I see the figure, I take the state level bank committee meeting, and always I instruct the private sector banks have to work more, or if you compare that difference is there, but we are trying to improve. The different schemes which are for the poor people, government schemes must be run in the private sector banks also.
आप हमारे साथ आज हैं. एक और सवाल जो उठता है, एक एलिगेशन लगती है कि मोदी सरकार का प्लान है सब कुछ बेच डालो, सब कुछ प्राइवेटाइज कर दो. आपकी अपनी क्या टिप्पणी रहेगी इस प्रश्न पे अबाउट द एलिगेशंस दैट मोदी गवर्नमेंट वांट्स टू प्राइवेटाइज एवरीथिंग?
You only said that is allegation, and I will also accept that that is only allegation. That is not the fact. ओनली मोदी सरकार और मोदी गवर्नमेंट चाहता है कि किधर भी हो, प्राइवेट सेक्टर बैंक हो या पब्लिक सेक्टर बैंक हो, पब्लिक सेक्टर यूनिट हो या anything from the government of India, the efficiency must be increased. Output, we have to increase the output. And at the same time, job creation must be more. Suppose we take one corporate unit and we take public sector unit, both suppose. If they are having the similar capital, similar things, but the public sector unit is not giving good result, good output, good job, then naturally we try to improve their output, we try to improve the jobs, number of the jobs. तो ऐसा कुछ नहीं है कि प्राइवेटाइजेशन हर चीज में करना है. जो यूनिट काम अच्छे नहीं हो रहे उसका काम कैसा बढ़े, उसी के माध्यम से जॉब और कैसा बढ़े, और अगर कॉर्पोरेट सेक्टर्स में कैसा बढ़े, इसके लिए हमारी नीति है.
एक आखिरी सवाल बैंक्स पे आपसे पूछूंगा कि पब्लिक सेक्टर बैंक्स और एनपीएस के लिए बहुत बारी ये कहा जाता है कि पब्लिक सेक्टर बैंकिंग में पॉलिटिकल प्रेशर है, लोग प्रेशर लाके लोन लेते हैं और लोन लेके भाग जाते हैं. आज अगर आपसे वो सवाल मैं पूछूं तो आप क्या बोलेंगे कि पब्लिक सेक्टर बैंक्स पे वो प्रेशर है कि क्या स्थिति?
See, I can give number of examples of this. This is called phone banking, but this was earlier, before 2014. There is not a single case after 2014 to whom the public sector bank has given the loan and that account has gone NPA and that borrower has run out of India. ऐसा एक भी केस नहीं है. बार बार संसद में, लोकसभा हो, राज्यसभा हो, मैंने इसका आंसर दिया हूं. जो कुछ मुझे आंसर देना पड़ा तो 2014 की केस है. मैं इससे आपको बताना चाहता हूं, आई वांट टू टेल ऑल द ऑडियंस दैट एज पर द रूल्स और डिसीजंस टेकन बाय द मोदी गवर्नमेंट, देयर इज नो restructuring of the loans except COVID period. But if you see earlier, the restructuring and repayment and freshening of the loan, that was earlier. Now no. And ultimately that hampers the NPA. If you see the NPA of the banks, NPA of the banks was increasing from 2014 to 15, 16, 17, 18. And it was around 11.5 or something, approximately I am saying. But since then, since 2018, it is now reducing. NPA are reducing, and not only that, why these 4 years are where? Because these were also Modi government, you can ask me. That period was also in Modi government. See, one thing I want to clear, that write up and waive up, that word one has to understand. Banks, to make their balance sheet clean, some accounts which are under NPA, they do write off their account, write off. In that case, they do the provision of the similar amount. Suppose I have taken 40 crore rupees, that account is in NPA, then 40 crore rupees we have to provision, we have to do the provision, we have to make it separate. We have to make deposit in the bank. And then after making the 100% provision, that takes 4 years. First year 25%, second year 40%, like this. But after making the provision, then that amount is taken out of the bank balance sheet. And this balance sheet is done for the tax purpose and to cleaning the. Then this is called a write-up. And there is not a single case where the account is waived up. किसी को माफी नहीं दिया है. और as per the rules, Surface Act हो, as per the rules NCLT, that NCLT Act or Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code that we have started, our government has started, Honorable Modi ji's government has started. So these are the different rules or different decisions taken by the Modi government, and I am here to share all the audience that all the public sector banks are now in profit, which were never earlier. This is a very good thing. And at the same time, the procedures to obtain the loan has become easy, but there was, I think, some meeting before I became the minister, that is in approximately in 2017 or something. Honorable Modi ji has taken a bank conference or bank meeting in the Pune, and at the same time it was told to everyone that there will be less political interference or no political interference in the bankings. So there is no phone banking, no phone call in the banks for getting the loan, no phone calls to restructuring the loans, and banks are independent. They are governed by the bank boards. Bank boards are able to take their own decisions, and of course, these bank boards are working as per the RBI guidelines.
Absolutely.
So this is a banking. I'm ready. I am really happy to share all these things with you, and our banks are doing very well.
I must just say, as we end this conversation, that in Business Today we have been doing a lot of coverage on the big banking turnaround, the big turnaround in public sector banks. As we close, my one quick point, Dr. Karad, while your government and you and everybody else in the finance ministry has been saving the banking system and our economy, you as a doctor have also saved people on flights. As we wind this session down, tell us that experience of being a...
Ask glucose water also. He has given the glucose water. I have taken his blood pressure. Then it was normal. I was sitting with for 15-20 minutes. He was normal. He started talking. Then he was sleeping down. And then I went to my place. But I have forgotten also this. But the next day, it was an Indigo flight. Indigo management has tweeted, so we have saved our passenger so and so because of the help from Dr. Karad, who is a health minister in Modi ji's government. And I think that tweet was seen by Honorable Prime Minister. And he also tweeted, he said, it was in his tweet that doctor is at his heart. Congratulate my colleague Dr. Karad.
Doctor at heart and doctor of banking, if I may say. Thank you very much, Dr. Karad, for taking out the time and speaking with us. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for...
And highways. A big round of applause, please.
Hello and welcome. What a power-packed day we've had, and now it's time for the grand finale. Ladies and gentlemen, at the Business Today Banking Summit and Awards, can we have a warm round of applause as we welcome one of the most dynamic ministers of the BJP government at the center, the man with the most out-of-the-box ideas for how to fix some of the biggest challenges facing the Indian economy, whether it's on infrastructure, climate, environment, waste. Nitin Gadkari ji, thank you so much for joining us here at the Business Today Banking Summit and Awards. I want to start by asking you about what's happened over the last several months at Joshimath, where we've seen land subsidence, and this brings up very starkly the issue of development versus nature. And the concern that as we develop some of the roads and highways that you are championing as much as you are, this potentially creates the problem of nature striking back, land going in, a water aquifer bursting. Now questions being asked about unsafe buildings. As the man in charge of infrastructure and roadways, how do you think we should find the balance? Ki infrastructure bhi develop ho, or ऐसा ना हो कि प्राकृतिक आपदा हमारे सर पे आ जाए जिससे फिर घर टूट जाए, सवाल खड़े हो रहे हैं कि क्या जो वहां पे हाईवेज बन रहे हैं उनसे चोट पहुंच रही है. हाउ डू वी बैलेंस एंड रिकंसाइल दिस?
देखिए, पहली बात तो ऐसी है कि टेक्निकल पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू इसका अध्ययन चल रहा है, तो मैं कुछ कमेंट नहीं करूंगा. पर जब हमारे केदारनाथ में, बद्रीनाथ में हादसा हुआ था और मैं 2014 में जब मिनिस्टर बना, तब ये 4 धाम करीब 12,000 का प्रोजेक्ट बनाने की बात चल रही थी. तब मेरे ध्यान में आया कि इंडियन कंसल्टेंट के बजाय लोगों ने मुझे सुझाव दिया कि स्विट्जरलैंड से हम डीपीआर बनाने के लिए कंसल्टेंट लाए. और उस समय स्विट्जरलैंड से जो कंसल्टेंट आए, क्योंकि स्विट्जरलैंड में ऐसी स्थिति है, उसके आधार पर हमने डीपीआर बनाया था. ये जो हिमालय है, यहाँ बड़ा फ्रॉजिल डाटा है, स्टाटा है पूरा. जैसे उदाहरण के लिए थोड़ा सा जियोलॉजी मैं जानता हूँ. 10 प्रकार के रॉक होते हैं, उसमें एक मोहा स्केल ऑफ हार्डनेस है. टाल, जिप्सम, कैल्साइट, एपेटाइट, अर्थोक्लेट्स, क्वार्ट्ज, कोरेंडम, डायमंड. द डायमंड इज सपोज टू बी द हार्डेस्ट मटेरियल. अब वहां जो है वो 2 नंबर पर जिप्सम है, और जिप्सम के कारण वैसे भी वो थोड़ा सा प्रॉब्लमेटिक सिचुएशन है. पर मुझे लगता है कि ये प्रॉब्लम आज का नहीं है, 1976 में भी आया था. तो टेक्निकल रिपोर्ट आने के बाद एकदम ये अर्ली हो जाएगा कि इसका संबंध कोई रोड से है, कोई टनल से है, या कोई. देखो, एक पिछले बार जो हादसा हुआ था उसमें हजारों लोग मर गए, बादल फट गए. तब प्रॉब्लम क्या था कि गंगा नदी के जोड़कर रोड था. अभी हमने जो टनल बनाई, जो रोड बनाया पूरा 4 धाम का, जिसका 70% 80% काम हो गया, और पिथौरागढ़ से मानस सरोवर जाने का भी 90% काम कर लिया. अब आपको चाइना या नेपाल जाने की जरूरत नहीं. तो स्वाभाविक रूप से वो कठिन है, पर रोड बनाने से ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है. दूसरी बात, हम लोग 4 धाम से जाते हैं तो स्ट्रेटेजिक पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू चाइना बॉर्डर पे जाते हैं. अब ये समझ लो कि स्ट्रेटेजिक पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू कल हमारी मिलिट्री के, डिफेंस के फोर्सेज जब जाएंगे तो उनको जाने के लिए भी रोड चाहिए, तो हमारी सुरक्षा के लिए भी महत्वपूर्ण है. मैं ये मानता हूं कि एथिक्स, इकोनॉमी, इकोलॉजी एंड एनवायरनमेंट, ये हमारे 3 इंपॉर्टेंट पिलर्स है. और इकोलॉजी एंड एनवायरनमेंट को भी प्रोटेक्ट करना और डेवलपमेंट को भी करना. आप देखो, मैं ग्रीन फ्यूल में कितना काम करूं. 2004 से मैं एक मिशन के रूप में हाइड्रोजन, इथेनॉल, इलेक्ट्रिक लगातार पीछे पड़ा रहता हूं कि पेट्रोल, डीजल और गैस को हटाओ. अब मुझे बताइए, हम पेड़ लगाने में इस साल मैंने 2.5 करोड़ पेड़ लगाए. हमने कम से कम ये द्वारका एक्सप्रेस हाईवे दिल्ली का, उसमें 12,000 पेड़ ट्रांसप्लांट किए हैं. तो इकोलॉजी एंड एनवायरनमेंट भी चाहिए और डेवलपमेंट भी चाहिए. पर डेवलपमेंट करते समय अगर इकोलॉजी एंड एनवायरनमेंट का अगर उसके ऊपर धोखा होता है तो उसकी भी चिंता करनी पड़ेगी. हमारी सरकार की ओर से गंभीरता का इसका अध्ययन होगा और निश्चित रूप से इकोलॉजी एंड एनवायरनमेंट को प्रोटेक्ट करके हम आगे जाएंगे.
आपके हमेशा से ही इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर को लेके बहुत ही आउट ऑफ द बॉक्स आइडियाज रहे. ये बहुत बड़ा चैलेंज है, क्योंकि हम चाहते हैं कि पहाड़ों में पर्यटन भी हो, इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर भी हो. आपने बोला बाराहोटी में चीन हमारे सामने बैठा है, उसका इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर बहुत अच्छे से डेवलप्ड है, लेकिन ये माउंटेन्स बहुत फ्रेजाइल है और ऐसे में खतरा अभी लैंड सब्सिडेंस का हो, क्लाउड बर्स्ट का हो, बहुत ज्यादा है. और जैसे टूरिज्म आता है तो कमर्शियल इंपेरेटिव्स बढ़ते हैं, लाजमी तौर पे मनुष्य का लालच और ग्रीड भी होती है. इसको कैसे टैकल किया जाए?
देखिए, आपको मैं एक प्रार्थना करूंगा कि आप बद्रीनाथ, केदारनाथ, गंगोत्री, यमुनोत्री भी एक बार चले जाइए.
मैं गया हूं.
अभी जो टनल्स बनाई हमने वहां, जो पहाड़ जो है, बिल्कुल सही आपका कहना कि वो प्रॉब्लम है, तो पूरी टनल बनाई है और उसको अंदर से कंक्रीटिंग किया हुआ है. तो दोनों भी बातें हैं कि जो पिछले बार हादसा हुआ जिसमें हजारों लोग मर गए और जो बादल फटने से प्रॉब्लम आया, तो हमें अभी ऑल सीजन रोड है नहीं, ये 6 महीना नहीं, ये साल भर जाने का रोड इसलिए हम बना पाए कि वहां हमने टनल्स बनाई है और रोड में हमने थोड़ा डीपीआर करके डिजाइनिंग बदल दिया है और पूरी चिंता की है कि इसके बाद ये कोई घटना ना हो. अब जैसे जोशीमठ की बात आप कर रहे हैं, तो हमने जोशीमठ को रिंग रोड बनाया बाहर से, ताकि वहाँ के इसमें जो होटल्स है, रेस्टोरेंट है, कुछ बन चुके हैं और कोई परमिशन लिया, किसी ने नहीं लिया, ड्रेनेज लाइन छोड़ दी, वाटर पाइपलाइन फूट गई, तो हमको प्लान डेवलपमेंट करके चिंता करनी पड़ेगी. अब आपको ये है कि मैं कोई टेक्निकल कमेंट्स नहीं करना चाहता, पर अगर रॉक ठीक नहीं है और पानी अगर अंदर जाएगा तो क्या होगा? तो वी नीड टू प्लान इट इन ए वेरी प्रॉपर वे, और इसका टेक्निकल रीजन आएगा और उसके बाद फिर मुझे लगता है टिप्पणी करना उचित। नहीं तो झट से लोग बोलते कि हम लोग रोड बना रहे हैं, इन्वायरमेंट को खत्म कर रहे हैं, ऐसा एकदम नहीं होना चाहिए। अगर स्टडी करें, अगर रिपोर्ट में आता है तो निश्चित रूप से हम हमारे इसमें सुधार करेंगे।
जब से गडकरी जी मिनिस्टर बने हैं तब से वो बात कर रहे हैं ग्रीन फ्यूल की, इलेक्ट्रिक व्हीकल्स की, इथेनॉल की, ग्रीन हाइड्रोजन की। शुरू में 2014 में जब बोलते थे तो लोगों को लगता था ये पता नहीं क्या बोल रहे हैं, इथेनॉल से थोड़ी गाड़ी कभी मैस स्केल पे चल सकती है या ईवी से। अभी आप ऑटो एक्सपो पे आए और वहां पे देखा कि ऑटो एक्सपो में इस बार इलेक्ट्रिक व्हीकल ज्यादा हैं और आइस कंबशन इंजन्स जो हैं उनके मॉडल्स कम आ रहे हैं। तो जो आपका एक तरीके से विजन था कि ग्रीन फ्यूल्स की तरफ बढ़ना है, क्या आपको लगता है कि वाकई में अब आखिरकार वो एक हकीकत बन रही है?
आपने अच्छा हुआ ये प्रश्न पूछा क्योंकि बैंकर्स बैठे हैं सामने। हमारे देश में शुगर सरप्लस है, 280 लाख टन शुगर की जरूरत होती है, 360 लाख टन प्रोडक्शन है और पिछले साल का 60 लाख टन। शुगर में ऐसा दुख है कि मैं मजाक में कहता हूं पिछले जन्म में पाप करता वो शुगर फैक्ट्री शुरू करता है। तो आज शुगर सरप्लस, कॉर्न सरप्लस, राइस सरप्लस, व्हीट सरप्लस, एक समय फूड वर्सेस फ्यूल ऐसा विवाद होता था। अब हमारी एमएसपी ज्यादा है और मार्केट प्राइस कम है, तो हमने ये किया है कि डाइवर्सिफिकेशन ऑफ एग्रीकल्चर टुवर्ड्स एनर्जी एंड पावर सेक्टर। हमारा किसान केवल अन्नदाता नहीं बने, ऊर्जादाता बने, और मैंने ऐसे अनेक उपक्रम अभी लिए हैं। पहली बात, हम लोग शुगर के जूस से इथेनॉल बना रहे हैं, फिर सी मोलाइसिस से इथेनॉल बना रहे हैं, फिर बी हेवी मोलाइसिस से इथेनॉल बना रहे हैं, फिर कॉर्न राइस उससे इथेनॉल बना रहे हैं। हमारे देश में 450 करोड़ लीटर इथेनॉल होता है। जब हम पेट्रोल में 20% डालेंगे तो हमको 1000 करोड़ लीटर लगेगा। हमारे जो आईटी टावर्स के जो जनरेटर है जो डीजल पर चल रहे हैं उसमें हमारे यहाँ 2000 करोड़ लीटर डीजल लगता है। और अभी मैंने ही ऐसे एक बार मेरे ध्यान में आया कि रशिया में इथेनॉल का माइलेज और पेट्रोल का माइलेज सेम हो, क्योंकि 1 लीटर ऑफ पेट्रोल इक्वल टू 1 लीटर 300 ml ऑफ इथेनॉल। तो मैंने टेक्नोलॉजी रशियन साइंटिस्ट को बुलाया और पेट्रोलियम मिनिस्टर, इंडियन ऑयल के चेयरमैन वैद्य साहब और राम कुमार जो है उनको प्रेजेंटेशन दिया। तो सब होने के बाद उन्होंने कहा कि आइडिया इज वेरी फैंटास्टिक बट इट सीम्स टू बी इट इज वेरी डिफिकल्ट। तो मैंने फिर हिंदी में उनको कहा कि ये गाजर की, उनके सामने बोल रहा था, गाजर की पुंगी है, बच गई तो बजाओ नहीं तो खा लो। वो 3 महीने के बाद प्रूव हो गया। अब इथेनॉल का माइलेज और पेट्रोल का सेम है। इथेनॉल का रेट 60 रुपए, पेट्रोल का 120 रुपए। अब टोयोटो की गाड़ी मेरे पास है और अब टोयोटो पूरी मॉल जो कैम्ब्री करके गाड़ी थी जो पेट्रोल में जाकर 40% बिजली तैयार करती थी वो अब 100% इथेनॉल पर चलेगी और बिजली तैयार करेगी। यानी पेट्रोल का भाव 25 रुपए जो आता है उस हिसाब से एवरेज मिलेगा। अब मर्सिडीज, BMW सब फ्लेक्स इंजन ला रहे हैं। अभी बजाज, टीवीएस और हीरो इन्होंने और होंडा इन्होंने उनकी मोटरसाइकिल, स्कूटर फ्लेक्स इंजन में बनाई इथेनॉल पर। अब हमारे देश में इथेनॉल एग्रीकल्चर में बनेगा, उसके कारण हमारा एग्रीकल्चर का ग्रोथ रेट केवल 12% है। 22 से 24% मैन्युफैक्चरिंग सेक्टर का है और 52 से 54% सर्विस सेक्टर का है। इथेनॉल ये जो फ्यूल है CNG, जैसे भी परली है, इंडियन ऑयल ने पानीपत में प्रोजेक्ट डाला है 1 लाख लीटर इथेनॉल और 150 टन बायोबिटुमिन। अब मैं एक सेंट्रल रिसर्च ऑर्गेनाइजेशन और अपने CSR ने मुझे प्रेजेंट दिया, मैं उसको पॉपुलर कर रहा हूं कि परली जलाने से दिल्ली में आपको मालूम है पोल्यूशन हो रहा है बर्निंग करने से। अब परली से 70% बायोबिटुमिन जिसमें 8 फीचर्स ऐसे हैं जो पेट्रोलियम बिटुमिन से अच्छा है और 30% बायोचार यानी कोल जो ऑर्गेनिक कार्बन है जो एग्रीकल्चर के लिए उपयोगी है। अब मुझे बताइए देश में 80 लाख टन बिटुमिन लगता है, 50 लाख टन बिटुमिन रिफाइनरी देती है, 30 लाख टन हम इंपोर्ट करते हैं। अब ये ट्रैक्टर मोल्डेड यूनिट अगर हरियाणा पंजाब के हर गांव में लग गया और बायोबिटुमिन तैयार होगा तो वैसे मैं तो इंडियन ऑयल को बोला कि पूरा हम खरीद लेंगे, तो 30 लाख टन का इंपोर्ट बचेगा, यहाँ रोजगार निर्माण होगा, एग्रीकल्चर में परचेसिंग पावर बढ़ेगी और इन्वायरमेंट का प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व होगा। इंपोर्ट सब्सटीट्यूट, कॉस्ट इफेक्टिव, पोल्यूशन फ्री और इंडिजिनियस। वैसे अभी पेट्रोलियम मंत्री जी ने कहा कि केवल हमने इथेनॉल ऐड करने से अब जो रेट बढ़े उसमें हमारा 40,000 करोड़ रुपए का फायदा हुआ। और आज आपको मैं बताता हूं कि हम 16 लाख करोड़ का इंपोर्ट फॉसिल फ्यूल का कर रहे हैं और उसके बदले में पोल्यूशन पूरा है जिसके कारण हमारे हेल्थ प्रॉब्लम क्या हो रहे हैं। तो दिस इज द टाइम। अभी 5 टन ऑफ परली इज गिविंग 1 टन ऑफ बायो सीएनजी एंड बायो एलएनजी। और मैंने कल ही ऑटो एक्सपो का उद्घाटन किया, आप जरूर उसको जाओ। इलेक्ट्रिक कार, फ्लेक्स इंजिन, स्कूटर्स सब आ गया। और वो मोटर, मुझे वो सियाम वाले सब कहते थे, मैं जब उनको बोलता था यूरो 6 का नॉर्म चाहिए तो मेरे ऊपर नाराज होते। मैं आए तो भी तुम्हारे साथ, नहीं आए तो तुम्हारे बिना बुलडोज करूंगा। अब कल उन्होंने पूरा ग्रीन एनर्जी का पैवेलियन बनाया था। मुझे इतनी खुशी हुई कि वो दिन अब दूर नहीं है कि ये 16 लाख करोड़ का इंपोर्ट कम होगा और कम से कम 7 से 8 लाख करोड़ अगर एग्रीकल्चर सेक्टर में जाएंगी तो ये 12% एग्रीकल्चर ग्रोथ रेट अगर 18 से 20% में गएगा तो आत्मनिर्भर भारत का प्रधानमंत्री का सपना पूरा होगा। तो इंपोर्ट सब्स्टिट्यूट, कॉस्ट इफेक्टिव, पोल्यूशन फ्री और इंडिजिनस, ये अब सक्सेस स्टोरी बन रही है। दूसरी बात ग्रीन हाइड्रोजन की है, वो भी बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है। जो पेट्रोलियम से बनता है वो ब्राउन हाइड्रोजन, जो कोल से बनता है वो ब्लैक हाइड्रोजन, और जो ग्रीन हाइड्रोजन है वो 3 है। और सरकार ने 20,000 करोड़ हाइड्रोजन मिशन के लिए रखे हैं। अब जैसे पानी से, मैंने अभी आपको उल्लेख किया था कि मथुरा में मैंने हाइब्रिड एन्युटी में ATMLD स्लज को त्रिवेणी इंजीनियरिंग ने लिया है और वो प्रोजेक्ट सक्सेसफुल हो गया। 20 करोड़ इंडियन ऑयल वो पानी खरीदता है और वो हाइब्रिड एन्युटी में सक्सेस हुआ। तो अभी रूफटॉप सोलर, क्योंकि पानी से जब बनाएंगे तो हमें बिजली 70% लगती है, तो रूफटॉप सोलर में बिजली की कॉस्ट कम है। और इलेक्ट्रोलाइजर में इंडिया इज नंबर 1 इन द वर्ल्ड इन मैन्युफैक्चरिंग ऑफ इलेक्ट्रोलाइजर। हम 90%, एक बंगलोर की कंपनी है, पूरा एक्सपोर्ट करती है। और इलेक्ट्रोलाइजर से ये करेंगे, ये हाइड्रोजन की कॉस्ट थोड़ी ज्यादा आ रही है। फिर इसके साथ जो बायोमास है या ऑर्गेनिक वेस्ट है कारपोरेशन की, म्यूनिसिपल वेस्ट, ये बायोडाइजेस्टर में डाल के मिथेन निकालकर फिर हाइड्रोजन निकलता है। तीसरा जो मैंने एक 4 दिन पहले बंगलोर में देखा, इंडियन इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ साइंस बेंगलोर में, उन्होंने बायोमास से ग्रीन हाइड्रोजन बनाया। मेरा जो एक्सपेक्टेशन है कि हमारा ग्रीन हाइड्रोजन 100 रुपए किलो मिले। अगर 100 रुपए किलो अगर ग्रीन हाइड्रोजन होगा तो 1 लीटर में वो 450, 1 किलो में 150 किलोमीटर चलता है। मेरे पास ग्रीन हाइड्रोजन की कार है टोयोटा की, उसका नाम है मिराई। मिराई मीन्स भविष्य। दिल्ली आओ, मैं एक बार घुमाऊंगा, मर्सिडीज से अच्छे इफेक्ट्स है। तो ये ग्रीन हाइड्रोजन इज द फ्यूचर फॉर द कंट्री। और हिंदुस्तान ये एनर्जी को इंपोर्ट करने वाला नहीं, तो एनर्जी को निर्यात करने वाला देश बनेगा। हमारी रेलवे, हवाई जहाज, हमारी गाड़ियां, ट्रक, बसेस, हमारा स्टील, केमिकल्स, सब उसके ऊपर चलेगी। और 10 साल में पूरा ये इंपोर्ट खत्म हो जाएगा, पोल्यूशन भी खत्म हो जाएगा। और दूसरा, एग्रीकल्चर में एकदम रिफॉर्म हो जाएगा। मैं आपको बता रहा हूं कि ये इतनी सक्सेस स्टोरी है कि गांव में, मेरी अपनी आइडिया, क्योंकि मैं जरा किसान सेंट्रिक हूं, मैं फार्मर हूं, तो मैंने कहा कि हर किसान के पास कुआं है, कुएं में पानी है, उधर रूफटॉप में एक अपना प्री कूलिंग प्लांट, कोल्ड स्टोरेज डालेगा। गवर्नमेंट की स्कीम्स है जिसमें गोडाउन करके फूड गिन रखेगा, उसी की पावर निकाल के इलेक्ट्रोलाइजर 1.25 करोड़ का है, उससे बिजली तैयार करेगा। और उसी को कॉम्प्रेस करने के लिए जो जनरेटर लगता है, मैंने किर्लोस्कर को आग्रह करके पहला जनरेटर इथेनॉल पे बनाया, मेरे घर पर है। और इथेनॉल पर 60 रुपए लीटर, डीजल 110 रुपए लीटर, वो कॉम्प्रेस करके 500 बार पर वही सामने एक गैस स्टेशन बनाएगा और ट्रक, बस में और गाड़ी में भरते जाएगा। तो किसान क्यों नहीं सम्मान, क्यों बड़े बड़े लोग आने के बजाय हम छोटे छोटे किसानों को ग्रीन हाइड्रोजन तैयार करने के लिए प्रोत्साहित करें। जो म्यूनिसिपल कारपोरेशन है, इनकी जो सॉलिड वेस्ट और लिक्विड वेस्ट है, वहां मीथेन मिलता है, उसका कन्वर्शन सेग्रीगेट करके एल्यूमिनियम, कॉपर, मेटल को रिसाइकलिंग करें, हमारे प्लास्टिक को रिसाइकल करें। और जो ऑर्गेनिक वेस्ट है वो बायोडाइजेस्टर में डाल के ग्रीन हाइड्रोजन निकाले। दूसरा, बायो टेक्नोलॉजी का उपयोग करके, जैसे हम वेस्टलैंड पे बांबू लगा रहे हैं, वो बांबू से हम लोग ग्रीन हाइड्रोजन बनाएंगे, बायो इथेनॉल बनाएंगे। अभी आसाम में हमने बहुत बड़ा प्रोजेक्ट डाला है जिसमें बांबू से बायो इथेनॉल बन रहा है। तो मुझे लगता है ये रूरल, एग्रीकल्चर और ट्राइबल, जो 65% पॉपुलेशन देश की है और जिनका ग्रोथ में केवल 12% कंट्रीब्यूशन है, वहां एम्प्लॉयमेंट पोटेंशियल बढ़ाना, वहां पर कैपिटल इनकम बढ़ाना, वहां जीडीपी ग्रोथ बढ़ाना और वहां की गरीबी दूर करना, यही हमारी आत्मनिर्भर भारत के लिए प्रायोरिटी है और इससे उसका फायदा होगा।
आप कोशिश कर रहे थे कि टेस्ला की मैन्युफैक्चरिंग यूनिट इंडिया में लग जाए। अभी अनाउंसमेंट आई कि टेस्ला तो इंडोनेशिया जा रहा है। सिंबॉलिकली अगर इलॉन मस्क इंडिया में आते और उनकी फैक्ट्री लगती, क्या आपको लगता कि इलेक्ट्रिक मोबिलिटी के अडॉप्शन में एक बड़ा इंडिकेशन होता उनका इंडिया की जगह इंडोनेशिया जाना? एज ट्रांसपोर्ट मिनिस्टर आप उसको कैसे?
आप अभी कल दिल्ली जाओ और एक बार ऑटो एक्सपो में जाओ, और इलेक्ट्रिक कार देखो, मैं अब कंपनियों के नाम नहीं लेता, मैंने लॉन्च की बहुत सी। मैंने हमारे भारतीय उद्योजकों को एक बार नाराज होकर कहा था, कॉस्ट सेंट्रिक मत बनो, क्वालिटी सेंट्रिक बनो। और आज हमारे कंपनियों का मार्केट शेयर बढ़ गया और बेस्ट क्वालिटी की कार वहां है, कोई टेक्सला से कम नहीं है। टेक्सला का स्वागत है, रेड कारपेट है। पर वो कहेंगे कि चाइना में बनाएंगे और हिंदुस्तान में बेचेंगे और हमको कंसेशन मिले, ये कैसे संभव है? वो हिंदुस्तान में मैन्युफैक्चरिंग करें। हमारी 7.5 लाख करोड़ की ऑटोमोबाइल इंडस्ट्री है। देश को सबसे ज्यादा जीएसटी स्टेट गवर्नमेंट और भारत सरकार को देने वाली ऑटोमोबाइल इंडस्ट्री, 4.5 करोड़ युवकों को जॉब देने वाली इंडस्ट्री ऑटोमोबाइल इंडस्ट्री, हमारा एक्सपोर्ट सबसे ज्यादा करने वाली ऑटोमोबाइल इंडस्ट्री। और आज मैं आपको बताता हूं, मैं ये बात कह चुका हूं कि पहले हम वर्ल्ड में चौथे नंबर पे थे। पहले नंबर पर यूएसए था, दूसरे नंबर पर पहले नंबर पर चाइना था, दूसरे नंबर पर यूएसए था, तीसरे नंबर पर जापान था, चौथे पर हम था। अब मैं इस विभाग का मंत्री हूं, मुझे बहुत खुशी है, कल मैंने सभी स्टेक होल्डर्स को धन्यवाद दिए। अब हम जापान को पीछे डालकर तीसरे नंबर पर गए। अब इलेक्ट्रिक, इथेनॉल, मिथेनॉल, बायोडीजल, बायो एलएनजी, बायो सीएनजी और इलेक्ट्रिक बसेस, इलेक्ट्रिक ट्रक सब मैंने देखी, हाइड्रोजन। मैं आपको बताता हूं कि 5 साल के अंदर, वैसे मैं बोलता हूं वो बातें 100% होती है, तो 5 साल के अंदर वर्ल्ड में नंबर 1 का ऑटोमोबाइल मैन्युफैक्चरिंग हब इंडिया बनेगा और इंडिया से सब एक्सपोर्ट होगा।
हम लोग बिजनेस टुडे के बैंकिंग समिट में बैठे हैं। सुबह से जो सेशंस हो रहे थे उसमें चर्चा कई मर्तबा इस बात पे हुई कि जो होलसेल क्रेडिट ऑफटेक है, यानी कि जो कि बड़े उद्योग हैं, वो कितना पैसा इन्वेस्ट कर रहे हैं इंडिया की स्टोरी में। जब आपकी सरकार ने कॉर्पोरेट टैक्स को कम किया तो एक्सपेक्टेड था कि इससे इन्वेस्टमेंट साइकिल एक किक ऑफ होगा। वो अब तक जिस तरीके से एक्सपेक्टेड था वो नहीं हुआ। उसकी कुछ वजह ये भी है कि पैंडेमिक भी हुआ, रशिया यूक्रेन की वॉर भी हुई। अगर आपसे पूछा जाए कि अगर इंडिया में इन्वेस्टमेंट साइकिल को किक ऑफ करना है, आपके क्या पॉलिसी सजेशंस या आइडियाज होंगे जिससे आपको लगता है कि इंडिया इंक दोबारा जिस रफ्तार से इंडिया की इन्वेस्टमेंट स्टोरी में इन्वेस्ट करना चाहिए वो स्टार्ट हो?
देखिए, इंडिया इज द फास्टेस्ट ग्रोइंग इकोनॉमी और कोई भी इकोनॉमी में सबसे ज्यादा कैपिटल इन्वेस्टमेंट इंडस्ट्री से आती है। और इंडस्ट्री वहीं आती है जहां वाटर, पावर, ट्रांसपोर्ट एंड कम्युनिकेशन होगा, इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर होगा। और जहां इन्वेस्टमेंट आएगी, कैपिटल इन्वेस्टमेंट आएगी, वहां एम्प्लॉयमेंट पोटेंशियल आएगा। और एम्प्लॉयमेंट पोटेंशियल आएगा, वहां ग्रोथ रेट बढ़ेगा, पर कैपिटल इनकम बढ़ेगा और इरेडिकेशन ऑफ पॉवर्टी होगी। मेरे हिसाब से आज हमारे यहाँ सबसे ज्यादा इन्वेस्टमेंट रूरल, एग्रीकल्चर और ट्राइबल इंडिया में होने की जरूरत है। जैसे टूरिज्म है जो ग्रामीण रूरल एरिया में है, एग्रीकल्चर बेस्ड इंडस्ट्रीज, फॉरेस्ट बेस्ड इंडस्ट्री। अब जैसे मैं कह रहा हूं कि 16 लाख करोड़ का फॉसिल फ्यूल का इंपोर्ट है, अगर ये बचाकर गांवों में अगर हम ऊर्जा तैयार करेंगे, हाइड्रोजन, इथेनॉल, तो स्वाभाविक रूप से हमारी ग्रोथ रेट बढ़ेगी। एक बात मैं आपको बताता हूं जो मेरे डिपार्टमेंट की है। अब मुझे इन्वेस्टमेंट, डोंट टेक इट अदर वे, मैं एरोगेंट नहीं हूं, तो मुझे कोई जरूरत ही नहीं है, इतना पैसा है मेरे पास, लाइन लगा के लोग पड़े हैं। अभी मैं इनवीट मॉडल में, मैंने बॉम्बे स्टॉक एक्सचेंज में 1 महीने भर पहले हमने हमारा बॉन्ड इश्यू इनवीट में लॉन्च किया। 10 दिन का टाइम था और 10 दिन के बाद मुझे बॉन्ड इश्यू क्लोज करना था। तो मैं अपने परिवार के साथ गोवा में गया, तो पहले दिन 7 घंटे में 7 आवर्स में 7 टाइम्स ओवर सब्सक्राइब हुआ। अब मैं 8.50% रिटर्न दे रहा हूं। बैंक वाले मेरे ऊपर नाराज होंगे। मैंने पहले आपको कहेंगे 2 धंधे मैंने अभी खराब किए। पहले परफॉर्मेंस गारंटी बैंक देती थी, मैं पीछे पढ़ के अभी इंश्योरेंस बॉन्ड लाया, तो नेचुरली अब बैंकों को परफॉर्मेंस गारंटी का बिजनेस कम होगा। अब मैं बोल रहा हूं कि अब ये देते 7% इंटरेस्ट या 6.5%, मैं दे रहा हूं 8.5%, वो भी 10,000 रुपए तक भी आप डाल सकते हो और इंटरेस्ट महीने में दूंगा आपके अकाउंट में। तो NHI AAA रेटिंग, और मुझे कोई पैसे के, मैं 5 लाख करोड़ के रोड बनाता हूं और मेरा टोल इनकम अभी 40,000 करोड़ है और 2 साल के बाद 1,40,000 करोड़ होगा। और मैं मोनेटाइज करता हूं रोड को और देता हूं, कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है। बैंक को भी हमको 25,000 करोड़ रुपए बिल्कुल तुरंत देते हैं, तो पैसे का कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है। एक बात जरूर है कि देश में इन्वेस्टमेंट आनी चाहिए। और एक बात सच है कि हमारे यहां मोदी जी के नेतृत्व में हमने जो लिबरल इकोनॉमिक पॉलिसी को स्वीकार किया है, उससे बड़े प्रमाण पर ये टेक्नोलॉजी आ रही है। पर दो बातें जरूरी है, इनोवेशन, एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप, साइंस, टेक्नोलॉजी, रिसर्च, स्किल्ड एंड सक्सेसफुल प्रैक्टिसेस, we name it as knowledge, and conversion of knowledge into wealth is the future. And second thing is, no one is West. No person is West. It is depending upon appropriate technology and appropriate vision of the leadership that you can convert West into wealth. तो मुझे दो बातों पे लगता है कि हमने ऐसे क्षेत्र चुनने चाहिए जिसमें हमारी कंपनियां जॉइंट वेंचर कोलैबोरेशन करें और टेक्नोलॉजी को लाएं। वर्ल्ड की बेस्ट टेक्नोलॉजी हमारे देश में रहे, इससे हमारा एक्सपोर्ट बढ़ेगा। दूसरी जो इंपॉर्टेंट चीज हम कर रहे हैं कि हमारी लॉजिस्टिक कॉस्ट 16% है और हमारे एक्सपोर्ट के लिए बड़ी अड़चन का विषय है। प्रधानमंत्री जी ने कहा कि हमको सिंगल डिजिट में जाना है, और आज मुझे खुशी है कि मैं 1 साल के बाद, आप मेरा जरूर इंटरव्यू लेना, तब मेरी बातों को रिकॉर्ड करके रखना। दिल्ली से देहरादून 2 घंटे में, दिल्ली से जयपुर 2 घंटे में, दिल्ली से हरिद्वार 2 घंटे में, दिल्ली से अमृतसर 4 घंटे में, दिल्ली से श्रीनगर 8 घंटे में, दिल्ली से कटरा 6 घंटे में, बेंगलोर से चेन्नई 2 घंटे में, नागपुर से पुणे 6 घंटे में, नागपुर से मुंबई 6 घंटे में, अब 24 घंटे लगते हैं, और बेंगलोर से मैसूर 1 घंटे में। तो पूरे देश में भी ऐसे 32 ग्रीन हाईवे बना रहा हूं मैं। तो लॉजिस्टिक कॉस्ट जो है वो 100%, 10% के नीचे आएगी। और हम फ्यूल कौन सा यूज कर रहे हैं? LNG। अभी LNG में अगर आज ट्रक चलाएंगे तो डीजल का जितना खर्चा है उसके 40% LNG पे ट्रक चलता है। अब ब्लू एनर्जी के ट्रक अभी आ गए, अभी कल वो क्यूमिंस कंपनी के आए, टाटा के आए, लेलैंड के आए। अब LNG बनेगा परली से, और वैसे इंपोर्टेड भी करना पड़ा, एकदम इतना नहीं बनेगा। तो नेचुरली लॉजिस्टिक कॉस्ट कम होगी। दूसरा, एक ट्रक अब दिल्ली से मुंबई 12 घंटे के बजाय कार आती है वो 18 घंटे लगेंगे, अभी 48 घंटे लग रहे हैं। तो एक ट्रक जो महीने में 4 बार या 5 बार आता था वो 8 से 9 बार आएगा, तो कॉस्ट कम हो जाएगी। मैं आपको बताता हूं, ऐसा थोड़ा सा प्रॉब्लमेटिक हो जाएगा, क्योंकि हमारी पहली प्रायोरिटी है वाटरवेज को। 10 रुपए खर्चा अगर लगता है रोड पे तो पानी पे 1 रुपया लगता है। तो पहली प्रायोरिटी वाटरवेज, सेकंड प्रायोरिटी रेलवे, थर्ड प्रायोरिटी रोड, और बाद में एविएशन। पर मेरे को डर है कि 1 साल के अंदर रेलवे के रेट के हिसाब से रोड का रेट कम हो जाएगा, और वो कम होने से फिर वो थोड़ा इम्बैलेंस हो सकता है। तो रेलवे भी कुछ सुधार करेगी, वो डबल कंटेनर लेके गाड़ी लेके जाएगी, तो ये अच्छी है, कंपटीशन है। तो लॉजिस्टिक कॉस्ट को कम करने से एक्सपोर्ट बढ़ेगा, और टेक्नोलॉजी में काफी बड़े प्रमाण पर इन्वेस्टमेंट आ रही है। और हमारे सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट चीज है, तुम एक बात समझो, पहले इलेक्ट्रिक स्कूटर आई, मैंने बजाज की लॉन्च की, टीवीएस की लॉन्च की, हीरो की लॉन्च की। 400 नए लड़के स्टार्टअप इलेक्ट्रिक स्कूटर बना रहे हैं, और उन्होंने क्या किया कि ये 125-130 किलोमीटर की बैटरी इनके पास है। तो उन्होंने स्टडी किया कि एक स्कूटर रोज दिन में कितने चलती है, तो 24 से 26 किलोमीटर। तो उनने 60 किलोमीटर की बैटरी लाई, जो 1,30,000 में ये बेच रहे, वो 70,000 रुपए और 60,000 में बेच रहे, और फटाफट उनका धंधा तेजी से चल रहा है। ऑटो रिक्शा बनी, ई कार्ड बना, ई रिक्शा आया। 1 करोड़ लोग साइकिल रिक्शा चलाते थे। जब मैंने वो बिल लाया, बहुत प्रॉब्लम है, क्योंकि वो इसका टायर लेते थे, उसका पार्ट यूज करते थे, सुप्रीम कोर्ट में केस गई। मैंने वह गरीब लोग अगर करता है तो गांधी जी ने कहा था गरीब के हित में तो करो, कॉपी कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता, मैंने अलाउ किया। आज 1 करोड़ लोग जो साइकिल रिक्शा चलाते थे, आपको एक साइकिल रिक्शा देश में नहीं दिखता, अब सब मैकेनिक्स ड्रिवन ई रिक्शा चला रहे। ये मानवता के आधार पर बड़ा काम होगा। तो टेक्नोलॉजी ड्रिवन इकोनॉमी, ये हमारी सबसे बड़ी स्ट्रेंथ है। हमारे आईटी इंजीनियर्स ने, सॉफ्टवेयर इंजीनियर वर्ल्ड में साबित कर दिया कि हमारे पास इतनी कितनी बड़ी क्षमता है। हमारे डॉक्टर्स यूरोप और अमेरिका में 10 में से 4 भारतीय हैं, और सबसे यंग टैलेंटेड इंजीनियरिंग मैन पावर किसी देश में तो हिंदुस्तान में है। तो टेक्नोलॉजी रिसर्च, जो मैंने बात कही, नॉलेज एज ए पावर, इसका सबसे बड़ा एडवांटेज हम कर सकते हैं। अब मैं स्पष्ट बोलना नहीं चाहता हूं, हमारे साथ कंपटीशन में बाकी भी देश है, पर दुनिया उनके साथ डील करना नहीं चाहती। दुनिया हिंदुस्तान से डील करना चाहते हैं, और निश्चित रूप से अगर हम इकोनॉमिक पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू कॉम्पिटिटिव होंगे तो हमारी ग्रोथ बढ़ेगी, एक्सपोर्ट बढ़ेगा, और हमारी जीडीपी ग्रोथ भी बढ़ेगी, और देश भी एक सुपर इकोनॉमिक पावर बनेगा। जैसे मैंने ऑटोमोबाइल इंडस्ट्री की बात की, बाकी इसमें भी हम आगे जाएंगे।
जब गडकरी जी शुरू में बोलते थे कि दिल्ली हरिद्वार 2 घंटे में होगा, दिल्ली देहरादून 2 घंटे में होगा, तो ज्यादातर लोग मानते नहीं थे, बोल रहे थे ऐसी बोल रहे हैं, ऐसा होगा नहीं। लेकिन पिछले कुछ साल में जो आपके डिपार्टमेंट ने काम किया उसने साबित कर दिया कि
एक अच्छी मजाक बताता हूँ,
मैं आपकी तारीफ कर रहा, आप सुन रहे थे, अरे मैं बोलने दो ना। वो ये कि जैसे आपकी एक इमेज बनी महाराष्ट्र में हाईवेज मैन की, मेरे को लगता है आई थिंक इट डिजर्व्स अ राउंड ऑफ अप्लॉज फॉर द मैनर इन विच वी हैव एक्चुअली सीन दैट सेम महाराष्ट्र मॉडल बीइंग रेप्लिकेटेड एल्सवेयर। ये बहुत बड़ी बात है, मतलब कहीं पे अगर काम दिखता है तो इन बड़ी सड़कों पे दिखता है जहां पे कम से कम गाड़ी अब स्पीड से दौड़ रही है।
एक आपको अनुभव बताता हूँ, मैं महाराष्ट्र में मंत्री था, तब ये मुंबई पुणे एक्सप्रेस हाईवे, वर्ली बांद्रा 55 फ्लाईओवर्स बनाने का मुझे मौका मिला। तो मैंने प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस करके डिक्लेयर किया कि मुंबई से पुणे 2 घंटे में होगा। अब मैं नाम नहीं लेता, 2 बड़े अखबारों ने मेरे ऊपर एडिटोरियल लिखा और उसमें इतना मेरे ऊपर क्रिटिसाइज किया कि ये पॉलिटिशियन खुद को क्या समझते हैं, कुछ भी बोलते हैं और ये इनको ऐसा लगता है क्या कि ये जो बोलेंगे वो उस पर हमने विश्वास रखना चाहिए। बाद में ये हाईवे बन गया, अब 2 घंटे में लोग आते हैं। तो अभी मैं उनको मिला तो मैंने कहा आपने तो मेरे ऊपर एडिटोरियल लिखा था, सीनियर जर्नलिस्ट, उन्होंने कहा हमको एक्सपेक्टेशन ही नहीं था ऐसा हो सकता है, हमको कभी लगा ही नहीं। वैसे ही यही है, पर आपको एक बात मैं जितनी बात बता रहा हूं एक भी पूरी बराबर नहीं होगी, तो तुम जरूर ब्रेकिंग न्यूज लगा लेना।
आपने चीन का जिक्र तो नहीं किया, लेकिन आपने इंडिकेट किया कि देश ऐसे हैं जहां से दुनिया इस वक्त चाइना +1 मॉडल के बारे में देख रही है। लेकिन कई सारी जो फाइनेंशियल कमेंट्री है वो ये कहती है कि इस पे चर्चा ज्यादा है, एक्चुअल पैसा या एक्चुअल मैन्युफैक्चरिंग उतनी मूव नहीं हुई। अगर आप देखो भी मैन्युफैक्चरिंग एज अ परसेंटेज ऑफ आर जीडीपी, जिस तरीके से सरकार ने दावा किया था कि नीडल मूव होगी, 25% पे हम लोग लेके आएंगे इसको, वो फिलहाल अभी भी नहीं हुआ। और हालांकि कुछ प्रोजेक्ट्स आए भी हैं, लेकिन कई सारी कंपनियां छोड़ के भी गई हैं। लेकिन इसमें जो ओवरऑल ट्रैक रिकॉर्ड है वो काफी मिक्स्ड है। अगर वाकई में हिंदुस्तान को चाइना +1 मॉडल जो ग्लोबल रीअरेंजमेंट हो रहा है उसका फायदा उठाना है, हमें आपके हिसाब से और क्या करने की जरूरत है ताकि ये जो बातचीत है वो एक्चुअल फाइनेंशियल ट्रांसफर में चेंज हो?
देखिए, 2 चीजें मुझे लगती है कि एग्रीकल्चर, एग्रो प्रोसेसिंग इंडस्ट्रीज, एग्रीकल्चर, ट्राइबल और रूरल, जहां 65% पॉपुलेशन है। आज मैं हवाई जहाज से आ रहा था तो मेरे साथ एक लंदन के 7-8 परिवार के लोग बैठे थे। तो मेरे बाजू में जो मेरा दोस्त था, मैंने कहा देखो ये ताड़ोबा आए होंगे। तो मैंने उनको पूछा ताड़ोबा गए थे? बोले हाँ। तो उसमें से 4-5 लोग मुझे नहीं पहचानते। तो एक लड़की है, उसने मेरे साथ फोटो निकाला, तो उसने पूछा क्यों निकाल रही हो? बोले ये हमारे मंत्री है। तो वो महिला बोली मैं नहीं जानती उनको, मैं लंदन से आई हूँ। तो बोले आप इसीलिए नहीं जानते। तो उसने उसको डांटा। तो वो उनको मैंने पूछा तो उन्होंने कहा हम ताड़ोबा देखने के लिए आए। अब नागपुर इज ए टाइगर कैपिटल, हमारे पास 2.5 घंटे के डिस्टेंस पर 350 टाइगर है। अब हमारा फॉरेस्ट एक्टिव हो गया, अब दुनिया भर के लोग टाइगर देखने के लिए आ रहे हैं। टूरिज्म ही ऐसा सेक्टर है कि जिसमें 49% कैपिटल इन्वेस्टमेंट एम्प्लॉयमेंट पोटेंशियल पे खर्चा होती है। अभी ये बद्रीनाथ, केदारनाथ, गंगोत्री, यमुनोत्री, ये ऑल सीजन रोड होगा साल भर, अभी 6 महीने जा सकते हैं, तो रोजगार बढ़ेगा। तो टूरिज्म के सेक्टर में रूरल एग्रीकल्चर है, वो ओली, मैंने आपको बताया अभी, ओली ये डावस से अच्छा है और वहां हम लोग इतना अच्छा टूरिज्म करते हैं। अभी मैं
कल ही डावस जा रहा हूँ, बोल रहे ओली डावस से अच्छा। वहां का इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर देखा है आपने? स्कीइंग का
देखा है?
वहां पे कैसे फर्स्ट क्लास आप ऊपर जाते हो। ओली में एक स्की लिफ्ट है सर।
2 चीजें, रुक जाओ, 2 साल मैं जोजिला टनल बना रहा हूँ कारगिल के नीचे, ऊपर से बाबा अमरनाथ दिखते हैं। वहां पूरे एरिया को मैंने एलजी को मांगा है और मैं आपको विश्वास के साथ बता रहा हूं कि ओली से अच्छा आपको 2-3 साल के बाद हिंदुस्तान में देखने के लिए मिलेगा। और अब यूरोपियन टूरिस्ट और वहां हमारे कश्मीर में आएंगे और हमारे यहाँ कारगिल में जाएंगे, जोजिला में जाएंगे। अब जोजिला टनल बन गए, जो लद्दाख लेह, यानी आप ये अभी रोहतांग पास गए, इतने में 3.5 तास लगता था, अटल टनल बनी 8 मिनट में आ गए। और उसके बाद मैं लद्दाख लेह तक 4 टनल बना रहा हूं। लद्दाख लेह के बाद जोजिला, जोजिला के बाद जेडमोर, जेडमोर के बाद श्रीनगर तक जन्नत है। आप इमेजिन करो कश्मीर क्या है। और वहां अगर आपने ये बर्फ गिरता है, मैं आपको बताता हूं, मैं फिर विश्वास के साथ कहता हूं कि डावोस के साथ भी अच्छा, केवल फैसिलिटी चाहिए, रिसोर्ट चाहिए, गेम्स चाहिए, सब ये आइस के ऊपर के, वहाँ अच्छे प्रकार की व्यवस्थाएं चाहिए, रोड अच्छा चाहिए, हेलीकॉप्टर हवाई जहाज उतरने की व्यवस्था चाहिए। 100% अगर हमने इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर खड़ा किया तो दुनिया भर के लोग आएंगे। आप कश्मीर में गुलमर्ग कितने लोग जा रहे देखो।
वो तब पॉसिबल है अगर आपको ट्रांसपोर्ट के अलावा हम साथ साथ टूरिज्म मिनिस्टर भी बना दें तब तो कुछ हो सकता है, वरना क्या होगा, सड़क बन जाएगी और आसपास की जो स्की लिफ्ट चाहिए वो नहीं बनेगी।
मैं केवल हम लोग हमारी विभाग की ओर से 1 लाख करोड़ के टनल्स और रोड कश्मीर में बना रहे हैं। 3 लाख करोड़ के रोड और टनल हम नॉर्थ ईस्ट में बना रहे हैं। आप मेघालय जाओ, त्रिपुरा जाओ, नागालैंड जाओ, कोई भी आसाम में जाओ और वहां से फीडबैक ले लो। देखो, प्रधानमंत्री जी ने हाईएस्ट प्रायोरिटी इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर डेवलपमेंट के लिए दी है और हम बहुत तेजी से बदल रहे हैं। और मैंने तो प्रॉमिस किया है कि 2024 समाप्त होने के पहले हिंदुस्तान का रोड इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर यूएसए के बराबर होगा।
यूएसए के बराबर?
हाँ, बिल्कुल। बिहार यूपी का भी होगा।
Here is the power of audacity. There is publicly stated ambition, the ability to stake your reputation and say, 1 साल बाद मेरा interview करना. And most of those things do happen. Sometimes they get delayed because of court factors or environmental factors, but most of it happens, which is a very significant achievement. मैं बचपन में जब तवांग जाता था 4 दिन लगते थे। हाल ही में मैं
अभी तवांग में भी अच्छा रोड बन रहा है।
जब भी मैं शूट करने गया तो हम लोग कुछ घंटे में वहां पे पहुंच गए। So you can actually see the infrastructure being developed in the Northeast. Nitin Gadkari ji, thank you so much for joining us here at the Business Today Banking Awards. I want Gadkari ji will stay with us. We're just starting the BT Best Banks Awards, so we'll just go down for a moment. I'll call Abha. She'll explain what we're doing. We'll explain how these awards have happened, and then we'll take it from there. Can we have a very warm round of applause for Nitin Gadkari, please? Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Namaste.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Thank you, Rahul. Do stay with us. We will be kicking off the BT KPMG Best Banks and FinTech Awards ceremony. Do stay with us as we step into the Gala Awards ceremony for this evening. Could I first invite Saurav Majumdar and Manoj Kumar Vijay, partner KPMG, for the opening address and also to really share with us the methodology behind the BT KPMG Best Banks and FinTech Awards 2023.
Thank you, Abha. So after a day of riveting discussions around the financial sector, banks, fintechs, we now come to the culmination of today's summit, which is the BT Best Banks Awards. Just a few points on the awards before I hand it over to explain the details to my colleague from KPMG. This is the 27th edition of the BT Best Banks Awards. 22 of them have been in partnership with KPMG, who've been with us for the last 22 years. This was initially done purely on the basis of numbers, which is quantitative. But later on, we decided that it's not just the numbers. You know, when you are awarding a bank, it is always better to include other factors like the quality of governance, leadership, and various other factors, how the bank has navigated the ecosystem, etc. So we broadened it to include qualitative aspects and a jury 7 years ago. The jury has therefore added enormous value over the last 7 years. And initially we would only consider banks. But then we decided, as the global and Indian financial ecosystem changed dramatically, we also started to include fintech companies as well. So these awards also include fintech companies in 2 categories. There are 13 categories this year, including both quantitative awards, which are based on numbers, like I said, and jury awards, which are based on the numbers, but then are decided by the jury. So it's two parts to these awards. One is the quantitative part, and then there is the qualitative/jury part. Now, I'm absolutely privileged to announce the jury names this year. We are extremely fortunate to have a fabulous jury this year, which is Mr. K V Kamath, who is the jury chair, Mr. Arun Kumar Purwar, former SBI chairman, Ms. Alice Vaidyan, former chairman and managing director of GIC Re, Mr. A.P. Hota, former boss of NPCI, and Mr. Avinash Gupta, MD and CEO of Dun & Bradstreet. So this is, as you can imagine, you can't get a jury better than this to decide this year's awards. Without much ado, I will just invite my colleague from KPMG to explain the details of the award, just in quick, a couple of slides, and then we will get to the award function itself. Come.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am extremely happy and delighted today that after a gap of a couple of years due to COVID, we missed this kind of an event, and we are back in the game to present today the awards. Incidentally, Saurabh mentioned we have 13 awards, and today being 13 Jan, so it's a bit of a coincidence, which is good to see that. So what I'll do is I'll take some 5 minutes actually, and I know everybody's eagerly waiting to get the awards. Just to take you through, the journey between us and BT, and Saurabh did mention, I think it would be one of the longest partnership that we share with BT as KPMG. 27 years is a real long time. And we have always actually every year worked together to see how best we can come up with innovative ideas and improvise on this journey. So as you know, 7 years back, actually we decided to introduce the qualitative awards also in addition to the quantitative survey that we do actually. And then 2 years back, we also introduced some FinTech awards. So that demonstrates that we are with the times, and as things develop, you've seen today's sessions as well, a lot's happening. I think we are trying to make sure that our awards are also taking, keeping that in mind as well. Just to give you a quick perspective on quantitative awards, what we do is, this is again a unique one, where we actually do a survey of all the banks in India and purely actually base them on the quantitative data for that year, picked up from the financial statements which are publicly available. What I mean is actually we try to avoid any bias or judgmental to come to the ranking on the basis of numbers as a base. And that is the output what we get. So based on financial statements, we had around 47 banks. And based on the financial data, we try and rank these banks on certain parameters. And the key parameters that we use are the size, strength, and the growth parameters. Each of them have been subdivided into various other parameters. Effectively, we use 34 sub-parameters to arrive at the ranking. And what is unique is we keep even improvising as disclosures in financial statements come in. For example, some of you all know divergence-related disclosures came in a few years back. We try to incorporate in some form and shape those disclosures as well as part of our quantitative scoring. And that's the output we get based on this. On the basis of the ranking, we present it to the jury, along with the qualitative factors which the jury considers. We then come up with the final rankings or the awards as the jury put out. So just to tell you on the qualitative factors which we introduced 7 years, this is very interesting. What we do is we invite all the banks to actually give us their self-nominations based on certain areas that we have decided. We have determined over the period that some of the categories we want to really reward. One is the innovation, one is the FinTech initiative, the talent and workforce, and now we've introduced the FinTech awards, as I mentioned, which is in the payment space and the value-added services. And in each of these categories, we try and see what is the customer impact, what is the efficiency impact, how is the overall impact in the sector that they do, and various other parameters. Based on this, our team actually works for almost 4 months and then come up with a final shortlisting of few names, which we presented to the esteemed jury. And already Saurabh mentioned about this time we had a very high-packed jury. We spent almost 3/4 of a day going through this whole parameters. We were challenged considerably. And at the end of it, I'm glad that, we will see who are the winners today. I don't want to take the thunder away. And it will be great to see how some of these banks actually do deserve where they are actually. So congratulations to all the winners in advance as well. Thanks. And this is how I've already explained. I think we are running short on time. So thank you very much, and look forward to the rest of the evening. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Manoj. And without much ado, I will leave the floor to Abha to announce the people, the eminent ministers and the people who will give away the awards, and to announce the winners as well. Thank you very much, and have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Saurav. Thank you, Manoj. Could I request the Honourable Minister, Mr. Kamath, to join us on stage, as well as Mr. Arun Puri as well. Could I have Mr. Puri as well join us here, please? Do remember we're going to take a group photo at the end, so do all of you stay with us for that. All right, let's kick off with the best large foreign bank, and the award goes to JP Morgan India. Nearly 91,000 crores, the bank has significant market share across segments and aiming for only a larger share of the pie. Kaustav Kulkarni, Senior Country Officer India and Vice Chairman Asia Pacific, JP Morgan. Congratulations, Kaustav. The best mid-sized Indian bank, and the award goes to Bank of Maharashtra. The highest share of current and saving accounts in the country. Nearly 1,500 crore on a business of 3.5 lakh crore today. Mr. A.S. Rajiv, MD and CEO, Bank of Maharashtra. Very big congratulations. The Best Small Finance Bank Award. AU Small Finance Bank. Sanjay Agrawal, MD and CEO, AU Small Finance Bank. Big congrats, Sanjay. In just a few years, doubling assets of its nearest competitor with the best asset quality and the highest return on capital employed among its peers. Best FinTech in Value-Added Services. And the award for the BT KPMG Best Banks and FinTech award for this category in 2023 goes to Perfios. Devashish Chakraborty, co-founder Perfios, joining us here on stage to collect the award. The company has cemented its place as a leading SaaS provider to the industry. It effected a major reshuffle of leadership and is on track to prepare for its IPO in the next 2 to 3 years. Profitable for the past 5 years, it's clocked to $17.5 million in revenues in FY22. Congratulations, Devashish. The Best FinTech in Payments, and the award goes to PayU. Hemant Dasani, Head Growth Business at PayU, joining us here on stage. Total payments volume rose 60% in the first 6 months this fiscal itself, and the company has been profitable. Can I also request Manoj Kumar Vijay, partner KPMG India, for the next set of awards.
Doing crazy dreaming.
Puri Award this year for consistent transformation, State Bank of India. Saloni Narayan, Deputy Managing Director, Finance at SBI, joining us here tonight. Congratulations, Saloni. Among the top 50 banks in the world, and currently with its retail journey, it's on track to continue to perform and continue to grow going forward. The best bank in innovation, and the award goes to ICICI Bank. Sandeep Bakshi, MD and CEO, ICICI Bank here tonight. Future ready, great digital infrastructure, digitally available relationship managers. The bank is actually the front runner in tech adoption. And the best small Indian bank, the award tonight goes to Tamil Nadu Mercantile Bank. S. Krishnan, MD and CEO, Tamil Nadu Mercantile Bank, ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause. A landmark year as the bank went public. It has emerged as the best small Indian bank for the award this year. The best large Indian bank, and the award goes to HDFC Bank. Shahzad Bharucha, Deputy MD, HDFC Bank, named the best large bank for a number of years now, continuing to top the category, and post the merger with a balance sheet size of 29 lakh crores. And the last, the grand finale tonight, the Bank of the Year Award. Any guesses? You're absolutely right. ICICI Bank. This is the third year in a row. Congratulations, Sandeep. Strong balance sheet and ROE has continued to jump to 16.6% this year. We are going to take a group photo of all the winners, but before that, could I request Mr. Puri, the Honourable Minister, and Mr. Kamath to unveil the Business Today cover. Saurabh Majumdar, Editor, Business Today, if I could have you on stage as well, please. Could I have all the winners here on stage for a group picture, please, with Mr. Puri, Mr. Nagpurwala, Mr. Kamath, Saurabh, and the Honourable Minister himself. Could I request the winners to join us on stage, please? Do carry your awards with you. If you could carry your awards with you, even better. Thank you so much, everybody. Do join us for drinks. The bar is open. We look forward to interacting with you outside. Thank you so much for being a wonderful audience. Thank you, Honorable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Kamath. And thank you, Mr. Puri, and the entire team of Business Today.